If you're a personal customer, you can request a 3-month payment break if you're struggling with your mortgage, loan or credit card. Or if you need help with an existing arranged overdraft, you could get £500 interest-free for 3 months. Remember, every one of us is here to support you. There are lots of ways we could help. Search NatWest Coronavirus.
Eligibility and conditions apply to payment breaks. Overdraft up to your agreed limit if lower than £500.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are working to
get things moving.
Sending spices to novice cooks.
Airbags to kids.
Desks for home offices.
Delivering the goods.
Shipping footballs.
Fruit trees.
And dishwashers.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Daybreak.
It is 6:30 on Wall Street. Good morning. I'm Nathan Hager.
And I'm Karen Moscow. We're just about 3 hours away from the opening of U.S. trading. Let's get you up to date on the news you need to know at this hour, beginning in Minneapolis, where hundreds gathered to honor the memory of George Floyd. The memorial was attended by political leaders and public figures from across the country. Thousands also gathered in Brooklyn, New York, to honor Floyd's memory, including his brother, Terrence.
I'm proud of the protests, but I'm not proud of the destruction.
And memorials in Minneapolis and New York were two of several gatherings across the country to honor the memory of George Floyd.
It was the 10th day of protests as well, peaceful rallies in most cities, though clashes did erupt again in New York. Bloomberg's John Tucker joins us live with the very latest. John?
And Nathan, thousands across New York City continued protests well past an 8 p.m. curfew. Police arrested dozens across Manhattan, Brooklyn, and the Bronx, though there were fewer violent incidents than in days past. Upstate in Buffalo, video of a confrontation between police and a protester has gone viral. Millions have watched footage of an elderly man pushed to the ground by police. The man hits the ground and a pool of blood forms near his head. 2 officers involved in the incident have been suspended. In New York, I'm John Tucker, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, John, thank you. Turning to financial markets now. Today's monthly payrolls report is the main event for investors. Economists predict a loss of 7.5 million jobs in May with an unemployment rate north of 19%. We get more from Bloomberg's Vinny Dal-Giudice.
Bloomberg Economics says April's employment data reflected the eye of the storm in terms of payroll cuts. Today's data covering May should reveal the breadth of the weakness, cuts across industries. Since the outbreak exploded in March, U.S. states have processed more than 40 million claims for unemployment benefits, though there are hints demand is moderating as the economy reopens. Federal Reserve officials nonetheless caution high employment will persist. Vinny Dal-Giudice, Bloomberg Daybreak.
All right, Vinny, thanks. Global stocks are rallying in the wake of fiscal and monetary measures out of Europe, and now we're learning more about plans for the next round of stimulus from the White House. Sources tell us the Trump administration expects to spend up to $1 trillion in the next package, though there will be a wait. Action on a measure likely won't get underway till late July.
And futures are higher this morning. S&P futures up about 21 points. Dow futures up 278 and NASDAQ futures up about 30. The 10-year Treasury down 10/32. Yield 0.85% and the yield on the 2-year 0.20%. NYMEX crude oil up 2.2%. Straight ahead, the latest world and national news. And this is Bloomberg.
All right, Karen, thank you. It is 6:33 on Wall Street, and Amy Morris is here with more on what's going on around the world. Amy?
All right, thanks, Nathan. New York City's non-essential shops, from clothiers to toy stores, will soon be allowed to offer limited services beginning Monday, but some of the city's biggest stores won't be participating.
Retailers are wrestling with reopening for pickup as they try to determine whether it would be both safe and profitable. Curbside assistance is different in cities than suburban shopping centers and strip malls, with urban consumers reliant on public transport. Though pickup is sure to lift sales with nearby shoppers, it would need to drive enough business to make the cost worth it. On top of that, some Manhattan shops have been damaged in looting, and storefronts on shopping thoroughfares like Fifth Avenue, Broadway, and Madison Avenue have been boarded up with plywood to deter damage. Charlie Pellet, Bloomberg Daybreak.
And a number of major retailers in New York City say they will not be reopening on Monday, including Kate Spade, Stuart Weitzman, and Coach. As the first phase of reopening is set to begin, makeup purveyor Ulta has no timeline set to reopen. Tiffany's has set a tentative reopen date for June 11th. And while Macy's is in talks with New York Mayor Bill de Blasio's office, it has no public plan for opening its flagship store, which was targeted by looters this week. In New Jersey, non-essential retail can reopen starting June 15th. New Jersey Governor Phil Murphy says customers will be required to wear face coverings, and stores are limited to 50% capacity. Now, as for the fight against the virus, there are new signs of hope in New York, where new COVID hospitalizations dropped to a new low. Still a warning from Governor Andrew Cuomo.
You're going to protest intelligently. Remember, the COVID virus is still out there.
And the nation's top infectious disease expert, Dr. Anthony Fauci, is saying the idea of keeping schools closed in the fall may not be necessary. New York University has been looking at leasing thousands of hotel rooms to house students for the fall semester. Sources tell Bloomberg News the university looked for rooms within walking distance of its Manhattan campus. It isn't clear if that search is ongoing. The school typically announces room assignments in July. The university's website says it does expect students to begin the fall semester on time. Global news 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Thanks, Amy. 6:35 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Sports Update. Here's John Stashauer.
Well, Nathan, until Wednesday, Drew Brees had an almost perfect image. Not only a record-breaking quarterback on the field, but he had done so much off it, especially in New Orleans following Katrina. And then the comments about not respecting anyone who would kneel during the national anthem. So yesterday, Brees posted a lengthy apology, later a video. There was a 2-hour-long virtual team meeting, and after it, Saints teammates Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas, his star running back and receiver, both said they forgive Brees. NBA Commissioner Adam Silver with interesting comments following the release of the plan for the NBA's return July 31st. He said some of the league's older coaches who'd be more prone to contracting the virus might not coach from the bench. This took some, like 65-year-old Alvin Gentry of the Pelicans, by surprise. Rick Carlisle of the Mavs, who's 60 and heads up the NBA Coaches Association, says he spoke with Silver and says the commissioner may have jumped the gun with his comments. The vote on the plan was 29-1. Only Portland voted no. The NBA announced the draft will be October 15th, and the 2021 season will start December 1st, and they'll have a full 82-game schedule. More details on the NHL's plan. The first round of the playoffs will be a best-of-5 series. All series after that, best-of-7, and it won't be a bracket. They'll reseed after each round. Baseball Players Association, quote, roundly rejected the owner's latest proposal. They seem dug in. They don't want their pay cut any further. They'd rather not play at all in 2020 if it is. We already learned about football players from Oklahoma State and Marshall getting coronavirus, and now 5 Alabama players reportedly have it after informal workouts on campus. John Stashauer, Bloomberg Sports. Nathan.
All right, John, thank you. To 6:37 on Wall Street.
The following commentary is from Bloomberg Opinion.
Mattis speaks. I'm Jonathan Bernstein, a columnist for Bloomberg Opinion. It's hard to get across what a big deal it is that former Defense Secretary James Mattis has publicly criticized Donald Trump, and in harsh and extremely personal terms. Mattis talked about, quote, those in office who would make a mockery of our Constitution, and said that, quote, we are witnessing the consequences of 3 years without mature leadership. He added that Trump was engaged in a deliberate attempt to divide us, something he says no other president in his lifetime has done. Mattis's criticism probably won't directly affect public opinion, but it will still matter by affecting elite opinion. Meanwhile, The list of Donald Trump's terrible personnel choices, according to Donald Trump, gets one name longer as the president reacted predictably by bashing Mattis. The list of awful Trump choices, according to Trump, now includes a defense secretary, a secretary of state, an attorney general, at least one national security advisor, and at least 2 White House chiefs of staff. It really is a remarkable record. I'm Jonathan Bernstein. For more opinion, please go to Bloomberg.com/opinion or OPIN Go on the Bloomberg terminal.
This has been Bloomberg Opinion.
You can hear Bloomberg Opinion commentaries every weekday at this time, and terminal customers can read more at OPIN Go. It's just before 6:39 on Wall Street. Time for the Bloomberg Green Report. Here's Jeff Bellinger.
Nearly 3 years after the last meeting of an advisory board for the Great Lakes, the Environmental Protection Agency is reestablishing the panel. 14 new members have been added to weigh in on issues including invasive species and water pollution. The reestablishment of the board comes as a new State of the Great Lakes report, jointly prepared by the EPA and its Canadian counterpart, show impacts from invasive species are growing, and regional efforts to reduce nutrient pollution have not prevented an increase in chemical concentrations. EPA Administrator Andrew Wheeler said in a news release that advice from the board has been a critical part of the agency's efforts to restore and protect the Great Lakes. Wheeler said the work is far from over, and the panel's future efforts will ensure that needed expertise is available for environmental agencies to use, both in the United States and in Canada. Jeff Bellinger, Bloomberg Radio.
All right, Jeff, thanks. Now some other stories we're following. Shares of American Airlines are surging in early trading. The carrier says it'll boost July flights 74% compared with this month, signaling travelers are returning to the skies more quickly than expected. Americans up nearly 12% in the pre-market. Shares of Slack are down more than 12% in early trading. The company, citing business uncertainty, is withdrawing its annual billings forecast. Investors take that as a sign Slack isn't confident it will benefit as much from the work-at-home era as some might expect. And employees of Estee Lauder are calling for the ouster of a board member and family heir over his support for President Trump and criticism of the company's response to the protests against police violence. Bloomberg News obtained a letter sent to Chairman William Lauder, where more than 100 employees and staff asked for the removal of Ronald Lauder, citing his political donations and concerns about his impact on race relations within the company. You're listening to Bloomberg Daybreak.
Why do hedge funds and other alternative managers rely on Pershing for a highly personalized experience? Mark Alderati, a managing director at BNY Mellon's Pershing and head of Prime Services, explains.
In today's fast-paced environment, where the only constants are change and volatility, you need a prime broker who's both steady and agile, focused on supporting your needs so that you can focus on growing your business and producing results. Exceptional client service and advocating for our clients is at the core of what we do. Our award-winning high-touch team is just one of the benefits of working with BNY Mellon. We help alternative investment managers create great experiences for their clients. Whether it's customized financing, securities lending solutions, platform access, or outsourced trading, BNY Mellon's Pershing is a prime broker who's committed to this business and dedicated to meeting your evolving demands.
To learn more about the unique and industry-leading solutions for hedge funds and other alternative managers, visit Pershing.com. Pershing LLC, member FINRA and NYSE SIPC.
Have you wanted to speak a new language, but you thought it'd be too hard or take too much time? Then go to Babbel.com, download the app, and try it for free. In just 15 minutes a day, you'll be on your way to speaking a new language in just a few weeks. And right now, you can try Babbel for free. Babbel starts out teaching you words and phrases by matching them with pictures. You won't believe how easy the interactive program is. Soon the sentences get a little bigger, and before you know it, you're having simulated conversations voiced by native speakers. And because Babbel is crafted by language experts and uses the spaced repetition method, in just 10 to 15 minutes a day, you'll be speaking the language of your choice with real confidence. With Babbel, you can speak a language. Just go to Babbel.com and start your first lesson in the language of your choice for free. Download the Babbel app or go to Babbel.com and try it for free. That's Babbel.com.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury.
This is an important update from the government about coronavirus symptoms and testing. If you have any one of the following symptoms, a high temperature, a new continuous cough, loss of taste or smell, you can now get tested. Do not leave home for any reason other than to get tested. Find out how to get a test and how long to isolate at nhs.uk/coronavirus. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
If you can build that flat-pack wardrobe without looking at the instructions, you've still got it. If you can manage 5 keepy uppies on your first go, you've without question still got it. If you can toss a pancake to the ceiling and not let it hit the floor, surely you've still got it. And if you can just about fit into those jeans you bought 5 years ago, you've definitely still got it. Brute, still got it.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care about each other, about our planet, about creating a better world for everyone, and becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are working to
Get things moving.
Sending spices to novice cooks.
Hairbands to kids.
Desks for home offices.
Delivering the goods.
Shipping footballs.
Fruit trees.
And dishwashers.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
At Asda, we've provided 3,500 care homes with priority access to delivery slots, and priority shopping hours are open to our care workers. We're also donating 250,000 face masks to care homes. Asda, we're all in this together. Please show ID for priority shopping. Check asda.com for times.
News and financial information 24 hours a day. Powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. This is Bloomberg Radio. Now, a global news update.
Special report, protests across America. George Floyd is remembered in Minneapolis at the first of several memorial services in his honor.
Floyd's family, especially 2 brothers and a nephew, remembered him in their grief as a father figure in a home with no father, who made mistakes but taught lessons on how to be a man.
I love my brother, man.
Reverend Al Sharpton called on a continuation of the fight for equality in Floyd's honor.
It's time for us to stand up in George's name and say, get your knee off our necks.
I'm Jim Roop.
The American Civil Liberties Union has sued the Trump administration, alleging officials violated the civil rights of protesters who were forcibly removed from a park near the White House by using chemical agents in a protest earlier this week. I'm John Trout.
They don't just talk to the most important people.
Is it as ominous this time around?
They talk with the most interesting people.
Are they taking this seriously?
Bloomberg Markets, weekday mornings at 10 Eastern on Bloomberg Radio. Bloomberg, the world is listening. Markets, headlines, and breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And this update brought to you by SEI. Since its founding 50 years ago, SEI has provided investment managers and asset owners with robust infrastructure platforms and flexible outsourcing solutions. Go to SEIC.com/IMS. Stocks rallying this morning. Futures higher. S&P futures up 22 points. Dow futures up 291. NASDAQ futures up 26. The DAX in Germany is up 1 1/3%. 10-year Treasury down 11/30 seconds. Yield 0.86%. And NYMEX crude oil up 2.4% or 91 cents at 38.31 a barrel. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Now here's Amy Morris with more on what's going on around the world. Amy.
All right, thank you, Karen. The tone of the protests is turning, shifting from explosive anger to a grassroots call for more to be done to address racial injustice. This as many political leaders, governors, health officials, and mayors are asking protesters to get tested for the coronavirus. There are more concerns now that those mass gatherings might spread the virus. And Congress is in a bind over what to do when unemployment benefits expire at the end of next month. There's no majority among lawmakers to extend the payments, but they can't just let them expire either. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on quick take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. Nathan.
Okay, Amy, thanks. We're live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studios. We're at 6:48 on Wall Street. Now time to check what's going on in D.C. Some of the top stories from the nation's capital include the ACLU suing President Trump and Attorney General William Barr over that clear out of protesters outside the White House before the president's photo op at a damaged church. Supreme Court Justice Sonia Sotomayor blocking a judge's order to move inmates out of a federal prison where 9 people have died of coronavirus. And House Speaker Nancy Pelosi backing New York Congressman Eliot Engel after Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez endorsed Engel's primary opponent. Also making news, a shifting political map putting President Trump in a precarious re-election position. For more, we're joined by Bloomberg U.S. Politics editor Kathleen Hunter. Such extraordinary events over the last few weeks and months, Kate, between coronavirus, the jobs report that's going to come out later this morning, now protests on the streets. This has been such a difficult period for the country, and now it does appear to be affecting the president politically.
It does. As you said, Nathan, we have kind of this trifecta of interconnected crises going on with the coronavirus pandemic, the economic impact of that, and now these protests. So I think that certainly is going to have dramatic political implications, and sort of the overarching question has been whether Joe Biden is going to be able, from a political standpoint, to seize on any vulnerabilities that these crises create in Trump and his reelection. And we're starting to see some signs that potentially that could be the case.
Where is the president most on the defensive right now in terms of the electoral college map?
Well, I would say a place to look at that's really going to be interesting to watch is the Midwest. We're seeing some signs that in states that Trump won that really helped to push him over the line, beating Hillary Clinton in 2016, that Joe Biden is making gains and perhaps even pulling ahead or widening some leads that we've seen in polls, in light of what's gone on with these crises that we've discussed. And so I think that the Midwest is going to be an area that's going to be potentially decisive in 2020. We know that it's an area that, could be affected by a lot of these job losses that we're seeing across the country. It's a area that has the potential to, have Democratic blue-collar voters that we saw in 2016 defecting to the Republican Party or staying home. If Biden is able to win back some of those people, I think that could be a very promising sign for the Democrats as they seek to regain the White House.
You talked about whether Biden is going to be able to seize this moment, and we have seen him emerge from his home studio where he's been over the last few months because of the coronavirus. Where do you expect him to start trying to take advantage? Is he going to start increasing his travel schedule at any time?
He is potentially there. His campaign has said that they're looking to get back on the road. Of course, he's trying to draw a contrast with his reaction to President Trump. So the campaign has to be sensitive to the idea of, emerging from his, self-quarantine slowly. But we did see him, for instance, go to Philadelphia this week to make a speech on race and the issues that the U.S. is confronting right now. I think the expectation is that we could see that continue. There's been some talk about Biden going next week to George Floyd's funeral in Houston, Texas. If we saw that happen, I think that would be potentially, a very high-profile moment for him that allows him to kind of get back in the news and draw a contrast. Obviously, this is from a political standpoint to, Trump, who isn't planning on attending any of the memorial events. And so I think that is something we should expect to see from Biden, but probably in a very measured way.
And in terms of vulnerabilities, something that's getting a bit of attention this morning is a town hall that Biden held last night with African-American leaders. And one comment he made that sort of harkens back to some past mistakes from past politicians. He said that 10 to 15% of the people out there are just not good people. Is that something that could hobble him going forward?
Well, it's interesting because, I feel like this is one of these things where you want to kind of say, do Democrats ever learn from their past mistakes? I mean, we look back to 2016 and we see we remember Hillary Clinton's comment about the basket of deplorables that she referenced, which turned off, I think, a lot of voters and certainly gave, an opening to Republicans that Trump and his campaign really seized upon. You can go back even further to Obama's campaign in 2008 when he talked about, voters who cling to guns and religion, which turned off, a similar segment of moderate and, potentially Republican but middle of the road voters and really energized the Republican base. And so I think that, this is another example that could fall into that category. Now, how much traction this particular comment gets, I think, a lot of political watchers are immediately thinking of those past examples, but how much traction this type of a comment gets in light of all the other news that's going on in America right now, I think remains to be seen. But it's certainly, I'd put it in the category of yet another unforced error from Joe Biden.
Our Bloomberg U.S. politics editor Kathleen Hunter, thank you, as always. Karen?
All right, Nathan, thank you. It is 6:53 on Wall Street. It's time for the Bloomberg Small Business Report with John Tucker. John, good morning.
And good morning, Karen. Bungalow Road is a gift shop with 3 locations at the Jersey Shore. They closed their doors when the coronavirus hit New Jersey. That was even before stay-at-home orders went into effect. Bridget Duffy is co-owner of the establishment. Bridget, tell us about the business. What sort of hit it's taken from the lockdown?
So mostly as a gift store, we are, a little cyclical and seasonal. That right now we're probably doing 10% of the business that we would normally be doing this time of the year. And that's kind of been the case since the pandemic started.
How did you pivot during the pandemic? Were you doing online sales or online purchases and then curbside pickup?
Yes. So we were doing Instagram, Facebook, things like that. We had a website that we had kind of let go stagnant. And then when this started, we relaunched it again. Our store is really more about, we think, the in-store experience. We gift wrap everything. We know a lot of the customers, and we also know the people that they're shopping for. So it's really like more of an experience. So it didn't always translate that well to online shopping.
Has anybody given you any clear indication of when the doors might reopen?
No, I feel like that is probably one of the things that is weighing on us the most, is that we don't have a timeline. Our stores, have a pretty small amount of people in them at one time. We usually only staff one person at a time. And there's probably at most maybe 3 shoppers at a time. So we don't really have a high capacity. So we're hoping that they can approve us to open for in-store shopping again soon.
All right, Bridget Duffy, co-owner of Bungalow Road, 3 locations on the Jersey Shore. Thanks for talking with us. It looks like you should be able to get those doors open shortly with word from Governor Phil Murphy that non-essential retail can get back to work June 15th. We're going to continue to bring you stories of small businesses struggling in the face of the coronavirus pandemic every day at this time, right here on Bloomberg Radio. I'm John Tucker. That's the Bloomberg Small Business Report. Karen.
All right, John, thank you. It is 6:56 on Wall Street. It's time for the Bloomberg NJIT STEM Report. It is brought to you by New Jersey Institute of Technology, a top 100 national university in the latest U.S. News and World Report college rankings. Learn more at news.njit.edu. Now here's what's making news in science, technology, engineering, and math. A battle of tech titans. Tesla CEO Elon Musk is stepping up his rivalry with Amazon founder Jeff Bezos. Musk tweeted that it's time to break up Amazon, adding that monopolies are wrong. Musk's post came in response to a tweet from a writer moved in error and is being reinstated. You may have to wait a little longer to get the new iPhone. Broadcom, a major Apple supplier, said there's a major product cycle delay at a large North American mobile phone customer. The company's CEO often refers to Apple that way. Bloomberg News previously reported Apple is planning to release its next iPhone line multiple weeks later than usual. The company typically unveils new devices in the second half of September. And speaking of Apple, employees heading back to work at the company's headquarters in Silicon Valley will face new realities in the COVID-19 era. There'll be optional testing for the virus, closed kitchens, and a requirement to wear masks. Temperature checks will be required. Apple began bringing some workers back to its main Apple Park office in May. And that's today's Bloomberg NJIT STEM Report. Futures this morning are higher. S&P futures up 22 points. Dow futures up 290. NASDAQ futures are up 26. And Bloomberg Surveillance is straight ahead with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrow, and Lisa Abramowitz. For Nathan Hager, I'm Karen Moscow, and this is Bloomberg.
Influential conversations from
People's Postcode Lottery's 30K a day is back. £30,000 will be won every single day by players in the July draws. That's £30,000 for every player in the winning postcode. Visit postcodelottery.co.uk/radio before midnight on the 18th of June to play in the July draws. PPL manage lotteries on behalf of good causes. 16 plus conditions apply. Responsibly.
Hi, I'm Dan from NatWest Manchester branch. We know life's hard right now, but if coronavirus has affected your finances, we're doing our best to make things easier. If you're a personal customer, you can request a 3-month payment break if you're struggling with your mortgage, loan or credit card. Or if you need help with an existing arranged overdraft, you could get £500 interest-free for 3 months. Remember, every one of us is here to support you. There are lots of ways we could help. Search NatWest Coronavirus.
Eligibility and conditions apply to payment breaks. Overdraft up to your agreed limit if lower than £500.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert. Control the virus. Save lives.
Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
I would find it very difficult to argue that we're going to have a V-shaped recovery. The closest anybody's come to it is China, and it doesn't look like a V to me.
You may want to reduce the suffering because there's a risk that the whole system will come crashing down.
Now is exactly the wrong time for fiscal policymakers to get a case of fiscal rectitude.
This is Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrow, and Lisa Abramowitz.
From New York City for our audience worldwide, good morning. This is Bloomberg Surveillance with equity futures positive. We're live on Bloomberg TV and radio alongside Tom Keene. I'm Jonathan Farrow together with Lisa Abramowitz. Tom Keene, what a week, what a moment. Social unrest across American cities, an unemployment rate set to approach 20%, and an equity market on the NASDAQ 100 just short of all-time highs. Quite a contrast.
Absolutely historic moment. John Farrow, we were speaking with Randall Krosner, the former governor of the Fed, moments ago, and he made very clear there are tangible parallels back to the Great Depression. Let me give you the one thing I'll be looking for, John, besides your interview with Lawrence Kudlow, and that will be the U6 all-in unemployment rate. It's at 22% now, and are we going to exceed the somewhat foggy statistic of 1933? Can we get out to a 25% U6 rate?
And Tom, I think we all hope that that is the worst of it, and from here we improve, and that's where there is this emotionless, single-minded focus of this market on reopening, on the cyclical recovery, on the months to come, Tom. And we have had one heck of a rally in cyclical assets through this week, in the FX market too, in the bond market, higher yields, steeper curves. It's been one heck of a week.
Oh, absolutely. No question about it. And just to distill that down, and John, we've got 8 ways to go here, and we've got wonderful guests to talk to on our simulcast this morning. The single chart for me that matters is the vanilla 2-10 spread. The difference in yield between the 10-year and the 2-year is now out 3 standard deviations. To translate that, John, that's a ginormous move.
Much more on the bond market still to come later on in the program. Lisa, the data 90 minutes away.
Yeah, we're going to be getting at 8:30 a.m. Wall Street time those U.S. made jobs numbers. They're expected to be catastrophic, perhaps not as catastrophic as what we saw in April, but still catastrophic nonetheless, with 7.5 million jobs lost. The expected unemployment rate in the United States is expected to surpass 19%. This from the lowest rate in modern history. Also, just other things that we're looking at today, the 1 p.m., the Baker Hughes U.S. rig count, give us a sense of the supply-demand dynamic. pandemic in the shale patch. And then President Trump will be traveling throughout the afternoon to Maine to speak with businesses. And a lot of people are hoping he'll give some comments around that to the press gaggle around him, not to mention the fact that there is this ongoing unrest around the country. But you also have questions about further stimulus measures to bring people back into the labor force. And John, I just want to say this has been an incredibly traumatic week that will be capped off with traumatic job losses. And I'm just really grateful that we've had a chance to be together to work through this, but we cannot overstate just how traumatic and devastating it has been on a psychological as well as a balance sheet level for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think you're on the right tone here, Lisa. An uncomfortable moment, an uncomfortable contrast, I'm sure, for many people who listen and watch this program on a weekly basis when you've seen the social unrest that we've seen through this week and a market that has just stayed laser focused on one thing, and that's reopening and the recovery still to come. I think you also bring up a good point on fiscal stimulus, Lisa, the next steps from this government, from this administration, from this Congress. And I want to catch up with Larry Kudlow, National Economic Council Director, a little bit later about that. I'm looking forward to that conversation, because the enhanced unemployment benefits of the last couple of months, they expire next month, Lisa. And I think everyone wants to know, will they be left to expire? Will they be extended? Or will they recalibrated somehow to encourage employment? Lisa, that will be the focus for me, I think, a little bit later.
Absolutely. A lot of people saying that there is little appetite in Congress to end these enhanced unemployment benefits. But the path, the gap between some Republicans and some Democrats on exactly how to extend these benefits is wide. And the question is, can they come to some sort of agreement, John, quickly enough to stave off the potential declines in consumer spending and the increase in defaults that people would expect should these unemployment benefits start to trickle out?
We reported on this in the last 24 hours that maybe we will have another fiscal plan led by the White House. It could be as much as $1 trillion, Tom, but it might not be considered until next month. So hopefully we'll get some clarity there. But for me, in a moment like this, when we look at where we are and where people think we are, it's actually quite fascinating, Tom. The range of the estimates, looking at the median estimate for payrolls Friday of negative 7.5 million. The high estimate is negative 800,000. The low estimate is negative 12 million. In a moment like this, there's a real throw a dart kind of feel to this labour market economy right now. People just guessing where we are, Tom.
I think there's some outlier calls, John. There's no question about that. But I really focus on what we're seeing published in the last 12 hours by economists as they tweak the statistics. And I'm going to say, John, U3, 18 or 17%, maybe is a center tendency. But again, John, this is not about economics. It's about social economics and political economics. And I'm looking at the U6 rate.
Well, I'm pleased to say we can start the program this morning with Jim O'Sullivan of TD Securities. He joins us right now. Jim, fantastic to have a forecaster as good as you with us on this program to kick off Payrolls Friday. Will this be the worst of it at 8:30 Eastern? Is this as bad as it gets?
Hi, Jonathan. Hi, Tom. Good morning. Yeah, I think so. I think this is the trough. I mean, obviously, it'll end up, if that's the case, being a 3-month recession. But I'm in a recession that was just so deep. I mean, usually recessions last close to a year. But yeah, the hope is that this is the trough in terms of payrolls, the high for unemployment. But obviously, this is a big hole that the economy's got to dig out of.
I mean, I look, Jim O'Sullivan, at where we are right now and the big hole we've got to come out of. But the fact is, it comes down to massive shift. How would you suggest fiscal has to shift in this nation, given the protests, given the looting, given the riots, given the social fabric of the country now? What does fiscal need to do next?
Well, I mean, of course, fiscal, has done a lot already. I mean, they've already passed some pretty big bills. One in particular, we're talking about close to a $4 trillion deficit this year, probably 19% of GDP. But, that said, there's probably more to do. And, certainly for state and local governments, it's clear they need aid. The unemployment benefits, you were just talking about them, the extended unemployment benefits, they may need to tweak the details a bit, to change the incentives a bit, perhaps. But clearly they will have to extend those beyond July as well. Because the unemployment rate, while it might peak in May and will probably start coming down in June and July, it's going to be way above where it was for a long time.
Jim, you mentioned it. We've reached the trough. This has become consensus among a lot of U.S. economists. The question is, how fast do we recover? What are you looking for in the jobs report in terms of the breadth of job losses that we may see, as well as how many people are getting rehired? What are you looking for to determine how quickly the economy is recovering?
Well, yeah, I mean, that's the big question going forward, and that won't be answered today. I mean, we're looking for a 3 million drop today, so I guess we're in the upper end of the range on the number for today. But of course, that comes after currently reported 20 million last month. So, I mean, you're talking 23 million there, almost a million then in March as well. So I think it's going to take a while to get those numbers back. But I mean, could you see payroll gains in the millions over the next few months? Sure. But I mean, unemployment is I mean, we'll see what the number is today exactly, but it's going to be very high for a while. But in terms of GDP, we're forecasting basically a 20% annual rate in the first half of the year on a decline basis, and then plus 13 in the second half. But the net of that is down 6% year over year at the end of the year.
Yeah, but that's pretty severe. Jim, you are, as John Farrell mentioned, you are one of the best forecasters we've got. What I'm absolutely thunderstruck by is we're looking at this job economy, and you just said a negative 20% GDP statistic, and am I right? Washington's sitting on their hands. If you do this off $1 trillion nominal GDP statistic, we need factors more aid just to get to that morning in America.
Well, I mean, there's two things. One, they have done a lot, frankly. I mean, we're looking already. What they've done is pointing to kind of a 19% of GDP deficit this year. I mean, I think there's more to come, and obviously the Fed has done a lot, and they're continuing to do a lot, even though they don't necessarily have to announce a whole lot new in terms of actions per se. The balance sheet is surging with 13.3 programs QE. But again, I agree. There's more to come, particularly on the fiscal side. And the other thing is, I mean, this is not a normal recession in the sense that it's going to be a totally slow grind back. I mean, there's going to be some let up on the restrictions on the supply side. So we will see some positive numbers the next couple of months. I mean, we've got an unemployment rate that we haven't seen since the 1940s. But, I mean, this is not the same in that sense, in that you look at the consumer confidence numbers, and they're higher now than they were at the low in the last recession, even though the unemployment rate is much higher. I mean, I think there is some hope that these numbers are exaggerated in terms of how weak the economy is. This is not a depression, but it's a very, very severe recession, absolutely.
Hey, Jim, great to catch up with you. Jim O'Sullivan there of TD Securities. And Tom, we will get limited insight into how this reopening is actually going. You've got to bear in mind that we're comparing the week of April 18th to the survey week of May 16th, I think. So you're going to have very limited insight into how the recovery and reopening process is actually going. And I think we all hope it's going better than many people expected, Tom.
I think every single report suggests that is true, John. The absolutely unique thing is when you're out in the streets of New York, and granted there's a big country out there not as economically impinged as New York, these are stunning statistics that we're seeing, and I just don't see an urgency out of Washington. And granted, John, Washington is distracted.
I get the feeling that we'll build some momentum in the coming weeks. Our reporting in the last 24 hours suggesting that perhaps it's something they pick up and run with next month, Tom, and I think we all hope that's the case as well. Some news coming out of the UK. I usually promise myself we don't cover Brexit too much, but this comes from the chief Brexit negotiator on the EU side of things, Mr. Barnier, saying no significant progress made in talks this week. Tom, that is going to be of no surprise to absolutely anybody. Cable right now, 126.42, unchanged on the day off the back of this. I don't think anybody should be stunned off the back of this, should they? Much more still to come. Less Brexit, much more on payrolls Friday in the United States of America, with full coverage still ahead right here on Bloomberg TV and radio. Alongside Tom Keene, I'm Jonathan Ferro, together with Lisa Abramovich. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Now let's see what else is going on around the world. Here with the latest headlines is Amy Morris. Good morning, Amy.
All right. Thank you, Tom, and good morning to you. The tone of the protests that have been set off by the death of George Floyd at the hands of police has taken a turn from explosive anger to a quiet but more forceful grassroots call for more to be done to address racial injustice. Many of the protests were more subdued for a second night as marches turned into memorials for Floyd, as strong calls were made for meaningful changes in policing and the criminal justice system. Now, during a virtual town hall focused on young Americans, Americans, Joe Biden spoke about the need to change the attitude of the country. The presumptive Democratic presidential nominee also reiterated his call for a National Police Oversight Commission.
As I said, within the first 100 days, I'm going to create a National Police Oversight Commission. And the vast majority of police are decent and honorable, black and white and Latino. And they, in fact, are worried about the culture as well.
The former vice president said that President Donald Trump has been a divisive leader who brings out the worst in people, and that the vast majority of Americans are decent and want to make the country a better place. The federal plan to contain continuing protests in the district and beyond currently employs about 7,600 civilian law enforcement, National Guard, and active duty Army personnel stationed just outside D.C. This is an array of forces that Attorney General William Barr and others say is justified to defend the Capitol at a time of unrest. And after approving the most generous unemployment benefits in U.S. history to help counter the coronavirus, Congress is now in a bind over what to do when those expire at the end of next month. With America gradually getting back to work, there is no majority among lawmakers to extend the $600 a week extra payments in their current form. Now we're live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers Studios. This is Global News 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg.
President of the Jewish Communal Fund, Zoya Raines, and her husband Robert Friedman, Jewish activists and philanthropists, talk about why they chose the Jewish Communal Fund for their charitable giving.
As very busy working parents, we wanted to focus more on the charity part of it and wanted to focus more on our children and less on the administration.
The Jewish Communal Fund is one of the oldest and largest donor-advised funds, but at the same time, they're totally up to date and have state-of-the-art systems for us to access and manage our contributions online. The assets in our fund at the JCF grow tax-free, so we can generate more charitable dollars to support the charities that we care about most.
Let JCF minimize your taxes and maximize your charitable giving.
We're incredibly passionate about our charity, and the JCF allows us to focus more on the charity and less on the administration and the headaches.
For more information about Jewish Communal Fund, visit our website at jcfny.org and request a new fund kit.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Influential conversation.
For the friendships, for the fresh air, for the space to grow, for the knowledge, for the sport, for the outdoor education, for the wide horizons, for the academic excellence, for the future. Unleash your child's education at West Buckland School, a co-educational day and boarding school in beautiful North Devon. If you're moving to the southwest for a better quality of life, this is education without compromise, in what the Good Schools Guide called a gem of a school in an exceptional location. To see for yourself, find us at westbuckland.com.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like discovering that the box of chocolates has a whole other layer underneath, or scoring extra poppadoms with your takeaway, or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage. Yeah, that moment feels good, right? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK.
People's Postcode Lottery's 30k a day is back. £30,000 will be won every single day by players in the July draws. That's £30,000 for every player in the winning postcode. Visit postcodelottery.co.uk/radio before midnight on the 18th of June to play in the July draws. PPL managed lotteries on behalf of good causes. 16 plus conditions apply. Play responsibly.
We needed more of a buffer to protect the White House and to protect our agents and Secret Service personnel who could be reached by projectiles from H Street. It is the responsibility of the federal government to render that protection, and we do so in close coordination with the Metropolitan Police Department.
Attorney General William Barr of the United States on quite a week for America and the nation's capital, as the perimeter of the White House, Tom Keene, is somewhat fortified by being ring-fenced in the last couple of days. It's quite a scene and quite a moment for this country. The politics very divided, as always, across any administration, but the labour market is where the focus is this morning, Tom.
Well, the labor market's a focus and the yield market as well, with yields up. But, John, I think we need to describe the new fencing at the White House, which goes way south towards the Jefferson Memorial to the end of the ellipse and comes all the way up, John, to that table where you and I have lunch at the Hay Adams Hotel overlooking Lafayette Park. That fence is right up against the Hay Adams window.
Always about your dinner, your lunch, or your drink somehow, somewhere, isn't it, Tom Keene? Let's get to the price action. Alongside Tom Keene, I'm Jonathan Ferro, together with Lisa Bramage. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Live on Bloomberg TV and radio, with your price action as follows. Going into that jobs day print, equity futures still positive, up 24 points on the S&P 500, up around about 0.8%. In the bond market, Treasury yields higher, curve steeper. That's the story of the week in the session too. Your 10-year, 0.87%. Quite a repricing through the week. And in foreign exchange, euro-dollar unchanged right now. But coming into today, Tom, 8 straight days of gains for the euro. That's euro strength. And the longest such streak going all the way back to 2011.
We talked to Jordan Rochester within the hour, John. I know you love his work from Nomura. He nailed that call through 110, and he made very clear, given the set of things in Europe, that there's a real reality of euro driving ever higher. Within this mix of news, folks, that we've got, we do have to spend some time on Washington, and of course we're trying to do it in a way away from the cable news derby, and we can really do that with Martin Schenker, our Chief Content Officer. Marty, we just heard the Attorney General of the United States wonder about quote-unquote projectiles. The level of paranoia, whether constructive or deconstructive, is tangible. I would suggest that has to come from the president. How does the administration assist the president forward on this Friday and into his weekend?
You know, and you're absolutely right, Tom. The symbol of a fenced-in White House is reminiscent of something you might see in, a foreign capital of a dictatorship. It's quite unsettling, and it does remind you of when Donald Trump was brought into the White House bunker. They were so concerned about his safety.
Well, I'm never going to say anything. I mean, all you got to do, folks, for our international audience is spend some time at Ford's Theater, and you always understand the safety of the president, or Marty, the statue of Garfield out on the Capitol lawn. Great. We all are very concerned about the president's safety. I understand that. But we've mixed that in with discussions of projectiles. Is there any reporting by Bloomberg or anyone else you respect of threatened projectiles?
Nothing that I've seen. The only projectiles that I'm aware of were sent into a crowd of peaceful protesters last week. So I suspect they just.
I think we might be using the line a little bit there, Marty Schenker there. Marty, forgive us. I think we'll have to leave that there. The line just breaking up just a little bit. Tom, I think that this contrast this week has been the story really for everybody. The contrast between the uncomfortable nature of some of the social unrest that we've seen overnight with the rioting, the more comforting effort to secure real change that I think we all want, and a market that has just ignored pretty much everything going on around the world in the hope that as we reopen, things just get better, and as the year grows older, the outlook improves. That's just been the story for this equity market.
John, I would like to take a more constructive tack in that the market is discounting action by government officials. Now, we all know, and John, you know the numbers better than me, and you'll mention it to Mr. Kudlow here in a few hours, the Fed consensus has acted. I would suggest on a fiscal basis, given the size of our many trillion-dollar economy, that Washington is way behind state and local assistance. I was out on the streets yesterday, John, for the first time, maybe the second, third time in 9 weeks, and it's absolutely stunning the hardship you see even in the fanciest parts of this great city.
Yeah, quite clearly the central bank effort over the last couple of months has divorced this equity market and this bond market and global markets from reality. But let's be clear, Lisa, that was the objective of the Federal Reserve, to detach financial conditions from the real economy to enable the recovery to be smoother as we work our way out the other side of this. That was the effort. That was the sole objective. But it's not just that. I don't want to put all of this down to what is happening with stimulus, because that would be disingenuous. When you take a company like American Airlines yesterday, Lisa, boosting capacity, bringing capacity back as things slowly start to improve as this economy reopens, I think it would be disingenuous to say this is all about stimulus when you do start to see us reopen without the threat of a second wave of infections, at least so far so good.
Well, this is the tension. If you see the reopening, the fact is people do have money to spend, and it is in part due to the fiscal stimulus that we've seen out of Washington, D.C., the enhanced unemployment benefits that we were talking about before. The question is, how long can that push the economy forward? Can we gain the momentum needed to get past this period of time and get a significant recovery? That is a serious question. And I think, John, you mentioned something else just now, and that is if we don't get a second wave. And I think people are starting to talk yet again about where the discussion is there, where the coronavirus task force is. Are we past the pandemic, or is this an increasing risk as people become less vigilant?
Well, every day that goes by, Tom, every single day that passes without an increase in infections, there will be more encouragement for people in this market to continue chasing that cyclical rally. And so far, and I say again, so far so good. We have reopened. You see the traffic start to build up around New York City before the reopening really gets underway. You've seen the pictures from the rest of the United States of America. And so far, so good.
And John, one of the signals of this week has been this shift away from the FANGs and the tech stocks over to that recovering America stocks. John, I know you bought the airlines at the bottom. You're making out like a bandit.
I use Warren Buffett as my contraindicator, Tom. That's what I've been doing for the last few years, and it's just started to work out. That's no shade being thrown at Warren. I'm going to stay out of trouble. From New York City this morning, good morning. I'm lucky the commercial break is just around the corner. Alongside Tom Keene, I'm Jonathan Ferro. Together with Lisa Abramowitz, getting you set up for this Payrolls Friday. We'll be catching up with Ellen Zentner of Morgan Stanley in a conversation you don't want to miss. That's just around the corner. Then later, response from the White House. Reaction first on Bloomberg with Larry Kudlow, National Economic Council Director, live on Bloomberg TV and radio. This is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know, with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset Management. I'm Steve Meyer, President, Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunities around the world. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. U.S. stock future.
It's not business as usual right now, but Square has tools to help your business adapt. Like Square Online Store. You can start selling online in a few easy steps with pickup, delivery, and shipping options. And if you are selling in person, you can take contactless payments with hardware like Square Reader and Square Terminal. You'll get your money the very next business day, so you can put it to work. All these Square tools work together, no matter where you're selling, and there's never hidden fees or long-term commitments. Find out how Square can help you get back to business by visiting square.com/UK. Square Up Europe Limited is regulated by the Financial Conduct Authority for the provision of payment services.
Hi, I'm Dan from NatWest Manchester branch. We know life's hard right now, but if coronavirus has affected your finances, we're doing our best to make things easier. If you're a personal customer, you can request a 3-month payment break if you're struggling with your mortgage, loan or credit card. Or if you need help with an existing arranged overdraft, you could get £500 interest-free for 3 months. Remember, every one of us is here to support you. There are lots of ways we could help. Search NatWest Coronavirus.
Eligibility and conditions apply to payment breaks. Overdraft up to your agreed limit if lower than £500.
Get your cook on with Asda. With Uncle Ben's rice, 250 grams for just £1. And our Butcher's Selection chicken breast fillets, only £3.40 for 650 grams. Why not whack it in the wok? At Asda, we're committed to low prices every day on the quality products you need. Asda. Selected stores and lines subject to availability.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance. For our audience worldwide, we're live on Bloomberg TV and radio alongside Tom Keene. I'm Jonathan Ferro, together with Lisa Abramowitz. We are counting you down, not just to the opening bell, but also this Payrolls Friday. That jobs report 1 hour away. The price action as follows as we count you down into that. Equity futures positive, 26 points on the S&P 500. Quite a week of gains for US equities and global equities as well, with a real cyclical tilt. The cyclical sectors badly beaten up in the downturn, really rallying off the bottom and rallying quite hard. In the bond market, Tom's been talking about it all morning. Steeper curve, high yields on a 10-year up 5 basis points to 0.87%. And in foreign exchange, story of the last couple of weeks really, weaker dollar against the euro over the previous 8 days. Today, euro dollar flat, but the Aussie advancing once again. And if I can, Tom, just for a moment, pick up on a currency pair like Aussie yen, the Australian dollar versus the Japanese yen. So on the one side, you've got that growth proxy, that cyclical story of the Aussie versus the Japanese yen, that safety, that haven currency on the other side. We have moved higher for 7 straight days. Aussie yen this week is positive 6%. A 6% move for a currency pair in the majors is quite a move, and that just explains how much that cyclical squeeze has taken hold of the FX market too.
It may be one part squeeze, but also, folks, you got to really wonder if it is, as James Bullard would say, a regime shift of sorts. And again, we see it in Euro, and we'll give you the market coverage here through the day with all of this news. She is Colorado economics, and there is a character to Colorado economics that goes back 50 years that the society matters. It's more than just the mathematics of what the labor economy will do. It is about the better good of a labor economy. This morning, this economy is shattered and in tatters. Joining us now from Morgan Stanley, Ellen Zentner. Ellen, you have been wonderful about going beneath the headline data for years. I want to go away from the path of 14% to whatever percent unemployment. There is a greater all-in number. Are we out to a 1933 statistic?
Yeah, so it's really difficult to gauge exactly what is the unemployment right now, Tom, because the noise in the data is so extreme. And the BLS is having difficulty categorizing those that they should count as unemployed versus not unemployed or temporarily unemployed. So when we add in all the workers that we think should be getting counted as unemployed, then we think, today's unemployment rate should be closer to 25%. That's what we're calling that shadow unemployment rate. Whereas we might get officially reported, at 17%, say. So it's much higher than where it is. But I don't think ugly numbers right now really surprise anyone.
Well, that may be fine, Ellen, but we've seen this unrest as protest, and of course we've seen that around other moments of great economic collapse within the country. Do you see a renewed urgency in Washington to assist? Forget about all the fancy technocracy and the bureaucracy. Is there any desire to assist people that are 20%, 25%, and the parts of the economy that are 30% unemployed?
So, Tom, what we see coming out of Washington is trying to figure out how they take care of unemployment benefits through this weekly supplemental that's already been in place. That's that $600 weekly supplemental. Any policies further that might come out of this are something that will be addressed down the line. I mean, right now they're trying to figure out these unemployment benefits that expire at the end of July, but are going to expire at a time when the unemployment rate is still double digits. And so one thing that they're thinking about doing is graduating that payment down rather than letting it just expire. And in theory, that's the way you would do government assistance programs, because in theory, as the labor market is improving, so in this case, with COVID as a backdrop, as businesses are opening up, gaining more capacity and bringing more workers back to work, the unemployment rate will come down gradually over time, and you're pulling that assistance away over time, so you're transitioning people back from government transfers to labor income. And so first and foremost, that's what Congress is addressing right now.
Ellen Zentner of Morgan Stanley, you have been one of the most accurate forecasters out there. And what I think everyone is trying to gauge right now in some of the soft data, some of the data that comes out in a more frequent manner, how quickly are jobs coming back? And this is the ultimate question that will lead to how high that unemployment rate will be at the end of this year, in the beginning of next year. What's your sense, based on the data that we're getting right now, of how quickly people are getting rehired?
So continuing claims remain elevated, but we're watching that weekly data on continuing claims to see to what extent does it come down. Now, as it comes down, it can be for several reasons. It can be that the continuing claim just simply runs out and they're not able to be counted as a continuing claim anymore. It could be that they go back to work. And so early on, you're not sure exactly which of those two it is. But I can tell you that if we track data, high-frequency data that some companies are putting out, for instance, Visa puts out a tracker of small and medium businesses where they can at least tell transactions at businesses. So in this case, those that have reopened, we can't glean from that what capacity that business is operating at, what their revenues are, or how many employees they've brought back, but we could tell that they're open. And they're finding that as many as 80% of the small and medium businesses across the U.S. are open to some degree. So you want to see that continue to improve and then track across the states the governors that have opened from phase 1, moving to phase 2, moving to phase 3 as we move from 25% capacity to 50%. And so we track all of that on a high frequency basis. I will tell you that because this is a net jobs number that we get every month, it's hirings versus separations. And separations are slowing, even though they're atrociously high. They have been slowing, and we can see that in the jobless claims data. But we are also hiring people back. Now, it's going to be a net negative today, but as early as June, we could move to a net positive on payrolls. We could be in a very different spot when we talk about this report next month.
This is a story, Alan, that I think the market is very much dialed in on. I just wonder how limited the payrolls report today will be to inform us about the reopening, rehiring effort. What's your take on that, Alan?
So I think it's still going to provide little clarity today, John. So the flows matter, and so because it's a net jobs number, we don't know until we get the so-called JOLTS data, which is the job openings and labor turnover survey data from the BLS, where we know what were the flows that drive this net jobs number that we're going to see today. We'll be able to see the underlying pace of hirings within that data. Unfortunately, that data is lagged by a full month. So the number today, the market is still going to be guessing what does that mean going forward for June.
Can you guess what consumption will do? Is there any tea leaves of diminished consumption? Are people, I know the savings rate is up through the moon. I get all that. But Ellen, given the jump condition here to numbers that are unimaginable, what does it mean for consumption, the backbone of our economy?
The savings rate, as the economy opens up just naturally, the savings rate is going to come down simply because we're open, and now with the money that we have. And remember, the savings rate that you see, that 30% savings rate, that's across all income groups. And so as the economy is opening up, structurally we'll be able to go out and spend more in relation to the income that we're bringing in. So that savings rate is going to come down as we open up. My guess is it's going to remain more elevated, just on more consumer caution and consumers that may want to distance themselves for longer than what the government is telling them is proper to do. There will be that lingering caution. What we are seeing, though, is that with those one-time rebate checks that came through, those were spent within about 9 days. That's according to an NBER study, and they were spent paying down debt. Non-durable household goods, we spent a lot making the box that we live in nicer during this time. And of course, we disproportionately spent on food when normally we spend these types of stimulus checks elsewhere. The unemployment benefits are also getting spent when you're giving them to liquidity-constrained households. And so they get spent. And that, alongside the forbearance programs, which had allowed people to delay credit card payments, utilities, other bills, the 12-month forbearance program for mortgages, there's been an incredible take-up rate for that. So we've just got an incredible amount of assistance that allow people to spend and bring that savings rate down as things open up, Tom. So I think we will get a good clip of consumer spending here, especially as we come out of these lockdowns. But I'm not worried about today. Yeah. That's a lot of pent-up demand that comes through, right? And you get me on this, John. I think we're worried about what kind of level of spending we graduate down to after we take care of this pent-up demand. And the path of COVID is going to dictate that.
I look forward to covering the story with you in the months to come. Alan, brilliant work over the last several weeks. My best to you, yours, and the whole of the team over at Morgan Stanley. Ellen Zentner there of Morgan Stanley ahead of this Payrolls Friday. And Tom, I think the summary really as follows. The payrolls report today speaks to the depth of the downturn. This market is focused on the trajectory of the recovery, and a lot of hope has come back in over the last several days.
Well, the hope's come back in, John. And, I think you could play it out in any number of mysteries to September or even into 2021. But the foundation here is low rates forever. John Herman of MUFG decisively reaffirmed today low rates forever out to 2021, 22. And John, I'm not going to get out there. You're going to, I'll be 6 feet in the ground, but 2023 even.
Well, I hope 2023 we're still doing this program together, Tom. That was dark. That was really dark. Why are we doing that?
Seriously.
Alongside Tom Keene.
It's a dark.
I'm Jonathan Ferro.
It's a
together
dark and gloomy
with
day.
Lisa Abramowitz. Get yourself a drink. Get a grip, man. Equity futures up 26 points on the S&P 500. We advanced by 0.8%. This equity market a real lift over the last week or so, really contrasting, a sharp contrast with the social unrest through this country. In the bond market, yields higher, the curve steeper. In FX, we've had a weaker dollar story as well. From New York this morning, good morning. This is Bloomberg.
Now let's see what else is going on around the world. Here with the latest headlines is Amy Morris. Good morning, Amy.
All right, thank you, Tom, and good morning. While the continuing protests in the U.S. over the death of George Floyd were mostly peaceful overnight, there were clashes with police again in New York. President Trump's popularity is suffering amid those protests, with Democratic candidate Joe Biden now almost 8 points ahead in an average of national polls. Biden said during an online forum with black supporters that 10% to 15% of Americans are not very good people.
Do we really think this is as good as we can be as a nation? I don't think the vast majority of people think that. There are probably anywhere from 10 to 15% of the people out there that are just not very good people. But that's not who we are. The vast majority of the people are decent.
The federal plan to contain protests in D.C. includes more than 7,600 civilian law enforcement, National Guard, and active duty Army personnel stationed just outside the district. Bloomberg News has seen the document compiled for the Joint Chiefs of Staff, which shows nearly 3,000 law enforcement personnel from U.S. agencies working alongside nearly 3,000 National Guard troops, supported by another 1,700 active duty military. Those troops would only be deployed into D.C. if the president invoked the Insurrection Act. A judge has ruled Tennessee must give all of its voters the option to cast ballots by mail because of the coronavirus pandemic, ruling that state's limits on absentee voting during the pandemic constitute an unreasonable burden on the fundamental right to vote guaranteed by the Tennessee Constitution. We're live from the Bloomberg Interactive Brokers studios. This is Global News, 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg.
With the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report, I'm Charlie Pellet. Japan is debating scaling back next year's Summer Olympics. Local media reports say it's considering various options, including limiting spectators and reducing the size of ceremonies. Back in March, the Tokyo 2020 Olympics were postponed to next summer as the coronavirus spread across the globe. Major League Soccer and its players' union have reached an agreement that paves the way for a summer tournament in Florida after the season was suspended by the coronavirus pandemic. The deal was announced by the Major League Soccer Players Association following tense talks that led to some players skipping voluntary workouts and the league threatening a lockout. NHRA drag racing will resume its season in July with back-to-back events at Lucas Oil Raceway in Indianapolis with limited spectators allowed. And that's the Bloomberg Business of Sports Report. I'm Charlie Pellet.
What's the true value of your custodial relationship? Ben Harrison of BNY Mellon's Pershing explains.
As sophisticated investors demand more from their advisors, advisory firms, in turn, need to rely on their custodian to help them grow their complex businesses. At BNY Mellon's Pershing, supporting the rapid growth of RIAs is our number one priority. We understand what it means to deliver true value to our clients who are looking for a custodian that is aligned with their best interest and delivers high-value solutions, all in an open architecture environment with flexibility, choice, and transparency. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength, resiliency, and high-touch service that BNY Mellon Pershing provides. When you work with Pershing, we put your business first. Can your custodian say that?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Pershing Advisor Solutions, LLC. Member FINRA SIP.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care about each other, about our planet, about creating a better world for everyone, and becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people who you might have infected. From now on, if you're told you've been exposed to an infected person, you must self-isolate for 14 days. Play your part and do the right thing so we can safely return to a more normal life. Go to nhs.uk or call 119. Stay alert, control the virus, save lives.
Get your cook on with Asda, with Uncle Ben's rice 250 grams for just £1, and our Butcher's Selection chicken breast fillets only £3.40 for 650 grams. Why not whack it in the wok? At Asda, we're committed to low prices every day on the quality products you need. Asda. Selected stores and lines subject to availability.
When containment measures were only in place from mid-March in most countries, Euro area GDP decreased by 3.8% quarter-on-quarter. Information from surveys, high-frequency indicators, and incoming hard data all point to a further significant contraction of real GDP in the second quarter.
ECB President Christine Lagarde on a bumpy road, a recovery that we will struggle to get through in Europe, still ahead of us. A lot of hope off the back of stimulus. The reality is the downturn is deep and the recovery could be slow on the continent. Off the back of that, I'm sure many of you are reflecting on 2012 and the whatever it takes speech. Frédéric Ducrozet, an ECB watcher over in Europe, said in 2012 it was whatever it takes. In 2020, it's for as long as it takes. Low rates for a whole lot longer. In your equity market this morning, good morning to you all. Alongside Tom Keane, I'm Jonathan Ferro, together with Lisa Bravitz. This is Bloomberg Surveillance. We advanced 27 points on the S&P 500, up around 0.8% in the bond market. Treasury yields higher once again. We add another 5 basis points to a 10-year maturity. Your yield 0.87%. And in foreign exchange, after 8 days of euro strength, we settled down a little bit. Euro dollar unchanged, but the dollar just weakening up again against the likes of sterling and the Aussie as well, Tom.
No question about that. Again, I'm watching yields there, the 2-10 spread as well. What is true in market economics and true in academic economics and labor economics is the world is caught up to David Blanchflower of Dartmouth College. Danny Blanchflower has been a piñata for 5 years, screaming about the inequality and the fictions of some of our labor statistics. Now all agree with Blanchflower. Danny Blanchflower joins us this morning from Dartmouth College Economics. Good to have you here, David Blanchflower. You are definitive on wage dynamics. Given this unemployment rate, given this terrible GDP economy, what will the wage curve do?
Well, wages are going to be compressed. That's clearly going to be what happens. I mean, I think we're in a position where it's really pretty hard to understand exactly what's going on. Analogies have been made to the Great Depression, but it took 2 years to get to the position we're going to hear today. That took us 2 months to get there. So we've really no real idea, what exactly is going to happen. Wage growth is going to lag, but these are unprecedented days, Tom. Wages are going to be hit. I mean, obviously, and John was just talking about the recovery in Europe. Obviously, it's really unclear what kind of recovery we're going to see in the United States. But I think a V-shape is just not on the cards.
Danny, one thing I know that you're exploring over the last decade, never mind the next several years, where did all the good jobs go? Do you see this trend of the last several months, which is totally unprecedented, accelerating some of the forces that we witnessed pre-COVID coming out of this?
Well, there's a couple of things going on here. Obviously, the first one is which firms are going to survive through all of this. That's the first thing. And are people going to change their behavior in particular ways? But I think you're right in the sense that perhaps people have suddenly realized that groups of workers that perhaps were regarded as not important, think of people who work in grocery stores, people who deliver things, health workers, people who sweep the floors in hospitals, those people turn out to be absolutely invaluable. So I think the people's view on those kinds of folks, think of the argument about the minimum wage. So I think those are all going to be important. But I think especially what we need to understand is that the people who do best in the boom are the ones who do worst in the slump. So already what we're seeing is the less educated minorities, particularly being hit by the virus, and they're being hit now by the inability to get food. And going forward, presumably those jobs are going to be gone. Think of minority, less educated folk who are coming out of schools now. Where are they going to go? So I think the lack of good jobs is going to be important, but I think the big story going forward is going to be the lack of jobs, period.
Danny, this has been an unprecedented shock, and it has led to an unprecedented response, which has led to some pretty strange occurrences. President Trump and Republicans sitting atop a regime that seems to be grappling and dabbling in modern monetary theory as well as universal income based on some of the enhanced unemployment benefits, based on what we've seen in terms of the usage of the money, the way that it has trickled into the economy. Are there any takeaways that you would draw that you think will be instructive going forward?
Well, I think there are, but I think the most instructive thing is that people have started to think the unthinkable. Central banks have thought the unthinkable, but in a sense, if you look at the numbers we're going to get today, they're simply not enough. We've not seen anywhere else in the world. Perhaps the only comparison would be Canada. We haven't seen anywhere else in the world where the unemployment rate has got to anything like the levels that we're at now. And the question really is going to be, when we get to the end of August and September and October, are these politicians going to have the courage to keep going? Remember what happened after 2008, global stimulus, bucks for fridges and all sorts of things like that. And then we get to 2010, everybody goes, okay, that's it, we're done. And so the question is, that's the first question, are they going to have the courage to keep going? But the second question is, what behavioral responses are going to be by people? Are they going to save more? And if they're saving more, then the need for politicians and central banks and tax authorities to do more will become urgent. But the worry is going to be that we get to the fall and people back off, and that's going to be kind of disastrous because the recovery will not be V-shaped. I've been thinking about a reverse square root. You go down, you come up a bit because the place is open again, and then you're flat for a very long time. And that, I think, is the worry.
Danny, we've got to leave it there. Danny, fantastic to catch up with you. And please send our thoughts to your family, won't you? I know the Blanchfires lost the matriarch in the last couple of weeks, and our thoughts from the whole team are with you, Danny. Love to you all. Danny Blanchflower there of Dartmouth and formerly of the MPC as well. A difficult moment for many people, Tom Keene. Looking ahead, we look at the depth of the downturn. We think about the trajectory of the recovery ahead of us as well. And it is going to be bumpy, and it could be two-speed. You get that initial jump as you reopen, and then the real slog starts. And I think what Danny touches on is important. As the crisis fades, will the collective will to do more to support this economy fade as well? No sign of that from the Federal Reserve. The hope is that you continue to see it from fiscal policymakers as well, worldwide, in the months and years to come.
Well, I would go to the first Tuesday of November, John, and see in the United States what the election will bring. I'm not going to pontificate on that, but I look at the decile recovery, John, every 10th of the population and how they recover out of this horrific moment, and you know that's going to be uneven.
From New York City this morning, good morning to you all. Alongside Tom Keene, I'm Jonathan Ferro, together with Lisa Abramowitz. This is Bloomberg Surveillance on this Payrolls Friday, live on Bloomberg TV and on Bloomberg Radio. We could see an unemployment rate drift towards 20%. We'll get a view, the expectation from Tom Porcelli of RBC next on this program. From New York, this is Bloomberg.
Lottery's 30k a day is back. £30,000 will be won every single day by players in the July draws. That's £30,000 for every player in the winning postcode. Visit postcodelottery.co.uk/radio before midnight on the 18th of June to play in the July draws. EPL managed lotteries on behalf of good causes. 16 plus conditions apply. Play responsibly.
TfL has a plan to help London reopen carefully, safely and sustainably. You can do your bit by continuing to work from home if you can and avoiding public transport. If you must use public transport, avoid peak hours, wear a face covering and wash your hands before and after travel. For everyone's safety, we regularly clean our services with antiviral disinfectant and will be providing hand sanitizer across our network. For more information, search TfL's Restart Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
Get your cook on with Asda, with Uncle Ben's rice 250 grams for just £1, and our Butcher's Selection chicken breast fillets only £3.40 for 650 grams. Why not whack it in the wok? At Asda, we're committed to low prices every day on the quality products you need. Asda. Selected stores and lines subject to availability.
From all of us at Thames Water, thank you for supporting our key workers. As the weather warms up, demand for our water is growing, so we need your help more than ever. From taking shorter showers to turning off your sprinklers, you can make every drop count, inside and outside your home, to keep taps flowing in your community. Just don't forget to keep washing your hands regularly in line with government advice. Be an H2O hero. Find out how at thameswater.co.uk/watersmart.
Dear Dad, happy Father's Day. You are my rock, my go-to guy. Whenever I call, you're happy just to listen. You've always been there for me, by my side. I don't know how you put up with my piano playing all those years. Hang on, kiddo. I'll listen in a sec. I miss you. See you soon. Love you lots, Luce. This Father's Day, send love straight to Dad's door with moonpig.com. Download the app today.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games.
Bergeron, he scores!
With game replay on TuneIn, you can listen to every power play, slap shot, and goal of the 2019-2020 season so far.
Suter to Cunnin to Fiala, he scores!
And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search Classic Game Replays to start listening.
This is Mike Golick Jr. from ESPN's Golick and Wingo. Every morning, Wingo, Dad, and I sit down to discuss all the news, drama, and highlights spinning the sports world that day. And with TuneIn, you can hear us whenever and wherever you go. Just search Golick and Wingo to start listening today.
Want to relive the glory of college football?
Balls over a man, into the end zone.
Come explore TuneIn's classic game replay collection to hear ESPN's complete coverage of the 2019 New Year's 6 bowl games. Don't miss your chance to re-experience the Rose Bowl, the 2020 National Championship, featuring Clemson and LSU.
There are going to be 2 champions on the field tomorrow night, and there's going to be 1 team hold up the trophy.
10, plays to the 5, touchdown!
Search Classic Game Replays to listen for free.
Have to get it right the first time.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio.
I would find it very difficult to argue that we're going to have a V-shaped recovery. The closest anybody's come to it is China, and it doesn't look like a V to me.
You may want to reduce the suffering because there's a risk that the whole system will come crashing down.
Now is exactly the wrong time for fiscal policymakers to get a case of fiscal rectitude.
This is Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene, Jonathan Farrell, and Lisa Abramowitz.
Good morning, everyone. Jonathan Farrell, Lisa Abramovitz, and Tom Keene on this historic Friday. Without question, the most difficult, the most challenging jobs report in my years of doing this for Bloomberg Surveillance and Bloomberg on the Economy. John Farrell, I'm going to lose the introductions this morning and get right to the moment. We've got great markets, yields higher, Dow futures up 300, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And John, no one is focused on anything but an update on this grim labor economy.
How quickly can this labour market heal is the question we ask every single month now, and we'll ask it again continually through the morning, Tom. The estimate is for unemployment to drift towards 20%. Maybe we get a median estimate of negative 7.5 million. Maybe it comes inside of that, given what we've seen this week from the ADP report, Tom. But the question hasn't changed. It's how quickly will we heal after a big, big downturn in a very short space of time?
A lot of opinions on that, and of course, as I was just mentioning, across the 10 deciles of the American demographics, it'll be a different rate of change for the haves and the have-nots. Lisa, what's so important here, and you nailed this a good number of weeks ago, is the damage here to the broad middle class. We're focused on the elites. Obviously, we do that at Bloomberg, and we're focused on maybe the people that service the elites, but it's a broad swath of America that is going to be gripped here by 20% unemployment.
Yeah, the lowest earning Americans are the ones that have been hit hardest by the pandemic. I keep coming back to Fed Chair Jay Powell's note that of people who earn less than $40,000 a year, 40% of them lost their jobs the initial weeks of the pandemic shutdowns. You know, there are a lot of questions that will not be answered by this jobs report, Tom, and this is something a lot of people are focusing on since it doesn't capture some of the reopening that we've seen in recent weeks. But perhaps we will get a sense of how much the job losses are widening beyond the initial cuts to those lower income earners. How much have they widened out with respect to industry as well as earning power? And I think that could be potentially instructive into the path of this recovery, Tom.
Yeah, you absolutely nailed that. I did not mention that, Lisa. Thank you so much. This is a really huge deal, folks. The difference in wages. John, I want to go to you once more before we get to our esteemed guests. And John, I want to preview arguably the conversation of the day, where you will listen to the justification forward of the Trump administration. What's your first question to Lawrence Kudlow today?
Well, I won't give away the first question, Tom, but I'll give you some insight into what we'll talk about. The fiscal plan going forward from here. There are some enhanced unemployment benefits that expire in the next month or so. I think everyone wants to know what happens next with that. Does it get extended or adapted? That's going to be one of the questions we'll talk about a little bit later. And we understand here at Bloomberg, we've learned in the last 24 hours that the president and the administration is looking at another $1 trillion fiscal effort. But maybe we've got to wait another month to get some clarity on the details of it, Tom.
Now, in my walks around the city yesterday, I don't know if we can wait a month given everything boarded up from the protests and the riots as well. We welcome all of you in this simulcast on Bloomberg Radio in Washington and Boston. We're thrilled that you're joining us as you work at home, as so many millions are doing that. And this is what we do best. We just had on David Blanchflower, first here on the wage dynamics, looking at it from an academic purview, and now one of the market economics leaders on the analysis of the American wage economy, and that is Thomas Porcelli of RBC Capital Markets. Tom, let me get the numbers out of the way. What's the unemployment rate going to be today? And far more importantly, what is the U6 all-in statistic going to indicate?
Yeah, so I think that this is the great discussion point for today, because I think there's a lot of moving parts in today's payroll numbers. So I think what we have to keep in mind is, so for us, we think that that ADP report, we do not believe that was a fluke. I know people keep on saying that maybe something quirky was going on. I think that this is what continuing claims drives home, is that you probably lost about 2 million jobs, which is roughly what we expect for today. But here's where the moving parts part of the conversation comes in. So if we back up for a second there's obviously two distinct reports embedded within the payroll report, right, which hopefully most of your listeners know, right? There's the establishment report, and then there's the household survey. So in the establishment report, this is where, we're looking for about a 2 million decline in jobs, 2.2 to be exact. And again, that would be consistent with continuing claims and sort of the quote-unquote improvement that we've seen there. But then there's another part of claims that I think we need to keep in mind, and that's something called pandemic unemployment assistance, or PUA. And so PUA is basically for the self-employed, right? It's for people that couldn't sort of get sort of the standard unemployment insurance. So what we actually see happening then is this dynamic which PUA is incredibly elevated. So what we can see is that the household survey will actually probably wind up showing more job losses than the sort of the standard establishment number. And what that means then as a result for the unemployment rate is that the unemployment rate is going to rise. And we think it's going to rise to at least 20% in the current week. So I think there's going to be, maybe initially on the initial print, if you're looking at your eco screen, there might be a little bit of confusion on the market's part of, which number do we pay attention to? We think for our part, we think the establishment numbers is really the thing that you should focus on. But again, more critically, there's live data that are coming out that make today's report look stale at this point.
Tom, that's what I wanted to build on, because I think it's really important. The survey week for this one, May 16th, just how instructive this payrolls report is about how well the reopening is going. What will we actually learn on that?
Yeah, I don't think you're going to learn much, to be honest. I mean, look, I get it. Everyone's going to be paying attention to the number of people that were put on unemployed for temporary reasons. I get it. And you was even some data from Challenger that basically showed and comported with what we knew from the last payroll report that indeed most people were put on temporary layoff related to COVID-19. But I think more critically for us is, and I've said this to you all before, there's some really great data out there. There's a company called Homebase that basically helps small businesses manage payrolls. And what we can see from that data, which by the way comes out daily with just a couple of day lag, is that you started the process of clawing back jobs. And by the way, if that's too esoteric for people, then just look at the ADP report. I mean, within the sectors, there were actually job gains, outright job gains. So the process is underway. I think the question is sort of the speed with which we can claw back some of these jobs. And I do think it'll be slow. And how do I define slow? Look, if we hit 20% on the unemployment rate today, we think, sort of by the end of the year, we'll be lucky if we can cut it in half.
So double figures, end of the year. That's the base case right now at RBC, Tom?
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly right.
That's unbelievable, Tom. And Tom Keene, you've been talking about this for the last several months. That's a difficult environment if we're still at 10%. And where the market is right now, and this has been a theme of our week, where the market is, it's interesting in the sequential positive surprise of reopening away from shutdown, that sequential month-on-month improvement. If we get to the end of the year, 10%, you've got to think about the limits of that improvement, how quickly we can actually get this down into the mid-single figures and get back to where we were just several months ago.
And what's interesting, Lisa, and jump in here, please, Lisa, because I just think it's so important to understand that a bit ago, for Tom Porcelli, Lisa Abramowitz, Jonathan Farrow, and myself, 12% unemployment was completely unacceptable. And yet, Lisa, this morning, we're wishing to get there.
Well, and that's actually exactly where I wanted to go. Tom Porcelli, I wanted to pick up on this idea that we are seeing we're hiring and it is happening at a pretty quick pace. But that's to be expected, right? I mean, the economy was closed in order to prevent the virus from spreading. Now it's reopening. People are going to get rehired. What are you looking for to determine the permanency of some of these layoffs that are being attributed to the pandemic? Is there any gauge that you think is reliable?
So I think right now the things that we have to sort of lean on to some extent are some of the things I mentioned already, right? Like the how many people have been put on temporary layoff. This new data from Challenger that basically drives home that most people were laid off because of COVID-19. The notion of permanency, I feel like this is a dangerous word, in that I think it tends to be overused, particularly today. I mean, if you're going to make the case for permanent job losses, right? Like that you're going to see some structural shift down in the amount of people that are going to be employed. I hope people are doing the homework on how you arrive at permanency. I mean, that means that there has to be some structural permanent downward shift from a demand perspective, from a consumer spending perspective. And I don't know how you make that claim right now. Again, I think it's something we need to be watching for, but I don't know how you lay claim to the notion of permanency at this point. If it's true that this is a government-mandated shutdown of an economy, and that the process of reopening is underway, then it's hard to lay claim, just given the landscape that exists today, that you're going to see any permanent job losses. Again, make the case that, hey, well, we're only going to need 80% of the amount of workers because of some technological shift, or because you do think that there's some permanent downward shift from a consumption perspective. But that's much harder to lay claim to that idea today, given the information that we have in hand.
Tom, we're tight on time, but just one quick question on young Porcelli. Yeah. We know that he's been following the NASDAQ for quite a while. I just wonder, Porcelli LP, what does he think of the NASDAQ? What does your little kid think of the NASDAQ getting back towards all-time highs? Preston was in my office yesterday, and he lamented the fact that the S&P and the Dow still were not in green from a year-to-date perspective. But he said, "Don't worry, Daddy." He said, "You're invested in the NASDAQ, right?" And I didn't have the heart to tell him that. Actually, no, Daddy's not. So. Well, send our best to him, won't you? Maybe he should be running the money over at Porcelli LP. Tom, fantastic to catch up with you. Tom Porcelli there of RBC. As we count you down to payrolls Friday in New York this morning, good morning to you all. Alongside Tom Keene, I'm Jonathan Ferro, together with Lisa Bravitz. This is Bloomberg Surveillance, with equity futures elevated on the session and on the week, with Treasury yields higher, the curve steeper, and the dollar weaker, as the optimism builds about a cyclical recovery, as we still haven't seen the worst of it in the data. We might see more of that in 20 minutes' time. This is Bloomberg.
Now let's see what else is going on around the world. Here with the latest headlines is Amy Morris. Good morning, Amy.
All right, thank you, Tom, and good morning to you. Protesters nationwide don't really seem to be deterred by curfews, but they aren't being as violent either. One top health official cautioning the mass gatherings could increase the spread of the coronavirus. Centers for Disease Control and Prevention Director Dr. Robert Redfield tells Congress that pepper spray can, of course, cause people to cough, which is not a good thing as the respiratory virus lingers.
We have advocated strongly the ability to have face coverings and masks available to protesters so that they can at least have those coverings.
Health officials and political leaders are asking demonstrators to not just wear face coverings, but to also get tested for the virus. The new jobless benefits program for gig economy workers now represents 36% of all unemployment insurance claims processed during the coronavirus pandemic, far surpassing initial projections, even without reflecting the data from 15 states plus the District of Columbia. President Trump's re-election operation plans to begin in-person training and voter contact in some parts of the U.S. next week for the first time since the coronavirus outbreak. The Republican National Committee says volunteers will follow local guidelines, wearing masks, limiting head counts, and social distancing. And a Chinese hacking group has targeted the personal email accounts of Joe Biden's campaign staff. Google says the company observed the Chinese activity against the campaign, as well as Iranian phishing attempts against personal email accounts for Trump campaign staff. Live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studios, this is Global News 24 hours a day, on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg.
"25 years ago, NJIT graduate Dick Sweeney co-founded Keurig Green Mountain, a company whose incredible innovations changed the way the world brews a cup of coffee. Today, he lectures widely on business leadership and is a strong advocate for NJIT's work to combine business education with the power of STEM.
NJIT is definitely fostering the innovative thinking for budding entrepreneurs simply because that's the world we live in. NJIT is producing students that have been trained, educated, and given the business acumen to be a contributor to a company. The distinct mission is to develop great STEM scholars. The attributes I've always looked for in team members are heart, smarts, guts, and luck. So we want people with passion, intelligence, courage, and never discount luck. The student coming out of NJIT has experienced all of that.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their businesses strategically, yet the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating system, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
Determination and operational strength are both essential factors for growth in asset management. I'm Steve Meyer, President and Head of SEI's Investment Manager Services Division. We know that disruptive forces create opportunity. If you see potential in change, our industry specialists will maximize SEI's integrated platform of data and risk management, global investment operations, compliance support, and investor services to position your asset management business for success. Come grow with us.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
You know that feeling when you get more than you expected? Like discovering that the box of chocolates has a whole other layer underneath, or scoring extra poppadoms with your takeaway, or joining Tesco Mobile and finding out you get the latest phones and 99% UK network coverage. Yeah, that moment feels good, right? Tesco Mobile. Every little helps.
99% 4G population coverage indoors and outdoors across UK. People's Postcode Lottery's 30k a day is back. £30,000 will be won every single day by players in the July draws. That's £30,000 for every player in the winning postcode. Visit postcodelottery.co.uk/radio before midnight on the 18th of June to play in the July draws. PPL manage lotteries on behalf of good causes. 16 plus conditions apply. Play responsibly.
Hi, I'm Dan from NatWest Manchester branch. We know life's hard right now, but if coronavirus has affected your finances, we're doing our best to make things easier. If you're a personal customer, you can request a 3-month payment break if you're struggling with your mortgage, loan or credit card. Or if you need help with an existing arranged overdraft, you could get £500 interest-free for 3 months. Remember, every one of us is here to support you. There are lots of ways we could help. Search NatWest Coronavirus.
Eligibility and conditions apply to payment breaks. Overdraft up to your agreed limit if lower than £500.
The Fed really needs to be careful not to let off on the accelerator pedal too fast. We're coming off a period of about half a dozen years where inflation ran below the 2% objective. The Fed really doesn't want to allow that to perpetuate.
David Wilcox of the Peterson Institute on the need for the Fed to do more. For every 5 David Wilcox says, I can find you about 50 that disagree with him on the Fed doing more. But that's this market right now, very polarized over monetary policy for not just what we've seen, but in the months ahead on what we might see as well. From New York City this morning, good morning to you all on this Payrolls Friday. Alongside Tom Keene, I'm Jonathan Ferro, together with Lisa Bram. It's the Payrolls Report, 12 minutes away, the opening bell an hour after that in the equity market. We drift higher once again on the session, up on the week, higher by 23 points this morning. We're up by 3/4 of 1%. Elsewhere in the bond market, going into these job numbers, what we've seen is much higher yields in the United States off very low levels historically. Your 10-year yield 0.87%, up 4 basis points on a session. And in foreign exchange, after some real euro strength over the last week or so, euro dollar just slightly negative after 8 days of gains. We have a down day. Cable advances 0.6%. Your payrolls report, Tom Keene, negative 7.5 million is the headline. Median estimate, your unemployment rate, the median estimate there, a drift higher from 14.7 up towards 19.
If anything, those numbers have come in, John. They're a little more attractive, like the ADP report was 2 days ago. So that may be true, but there are many other statistics that really matter to show where this nation is in terms of not only unemployed, but the many other shades of unemployment that could add up to well over a 20% statistic for the all-in U6 statistic. James Glassman is with JP Morgan, and he has been a foundation to our labor economy coverage here at Bloomberg Surveillance for years. We're thrilled he could join us again this morning. Jim Glassman, I want to know the singular distinction you would look at this morning and all of this labor data. What is the way you will try to interpret that wall of statistics?
You know, Tom, thanks good to be back again here. You know, as you said, the real problem in the last, since the last survey was the unemployment problem is really now more about the self-employed. They have a special program they can apply for, so that's where payrolls may not be down as much as people think, but unemployment's still up. Honestly, I think it's really difficult to see through the fog of all these awful numbers, but I think the one thing that does distinguish this period from other periods in the past, and particularly the Great Depression era, is that Washington took some very big steps to help replace the income that people weren't earning by not being able to go to their work. And so you saw that story last week in the personal income report. Labor income way down, but total personal income up, and that's because of all the transfers. I think we're still in this. It's too early. Only now am I starting to see restaurants opening up. Things are beginning to happen, and I don't think anybody would be surprised by any news. There's nothing in this report today that's going to help me understand where we're going. What you really want to know is how quickly can we get back on our feet. We won't know for a while, but I think all this help we're giving people to replace the income they weren't earning is going to go a long way to helping them get back to life. But I think that story is only beginning now, and so I wouldn't expect the job market report. As you can tell from the weekly jobless claims figures, there's nothing really that I see that's going to be positive or going to help me understand where we're going.
Jim, one reason why I love speaking with you is because you did both serve as a senior economist at the Fed and you've held prominent positions at a number of different banks. But you also have traveled around the country, I picture in your VW Bug, talking to people and finding out how they're feeling about the economy. You've been unable to do that physically. You've been doing it virtually. How is sentiment right now?
You know, I think everybody is not quite where the stock market is, but they understand that there's no template that we can look to understand what's going on right now. They know that we're in a bad way, and people are beginning to sense that things are slowly waking up. You know that, if I can't go to the restaurant, can't use my gym, you know that you're not going to see many signs of life. But I'm hearing more and more of those kinds of stories, at least that things are stabilizing. They say most of the folks, commercial real estate, manufacturing activity, people sense that, okay, we took a really big hit in March and April. It seems like things are stabilizing, and I think everybody's hopeful. They hope that what's going on in the equity market is the right way to think about the future, that we're going to have a faster rebound than normal. But I think everybody just doesn't know. They're in a fog. They're waiting, and they hope that people who are more hopeful like me are right. But I think they have a better understanding of what's going on.
Jim, let me explore this just to wrap things up. A lot of people still haven't been able to go out of the house, especially here in New York City. I imagine the majority of people that make up the estimate for Jobs Day today live in New York City. And I just wonder to what degree being anchored in a city that is still shut down distorts the overall perception of what is going on in the broader economy in the whole country.
Probably so. I mean, I honestly think when you think about what happened, a lot of this trouble that we're seeing in the job market is centered in the small business community. And the companies that follow that kind of activity tell us that activity dropped 65%. So there's like 40 million people who didn't have jobs to go to. And I think most of this happened earlier. It happened mostly in April. I think, though, that we all know, the real problem is that many people who are self-employed didn't have access to unemployment benefits till late April. So they're the ones that are now showing up in these statistics. I think, though, I'm based in the LA area right now, and I see things waking up. I mean, it's amazing to me. Restaurants are starting to open up again. Gyms are starting to open up. I don't know if that's happening in New York City, but I think there is a feeling that, and if you haven't seen it yet, you're going to start to sense that things are starting to wake up, and when they do, then you would expect to start to pay more attention to the employment trends, because then you know that the tide is shifting, and you'll be asking, how quickly can we get back on our feet? So, yeah, I think what's going on in New York City is important, but I think much of the country really hasn't been shuttered like we have been in the big urban areas.
Jim Glassman at JP Morgan Chase. Jim, always great to catch up with you on Payrolls Friday. I hope you and yours are doing well. The payrolls report a little over 5 minutes away. Negative 7.5 million is your median estimate. Tom Keene, where's your focus come 8:30:01?
I am going to go, as I say, John, beneath the headline data. I used to look at the median weekly statistics. Now I don't. Now I look at that all-in U6 rate to see if it breaches out past what we saw in 1933.
Alongside Tom Keene, I'm Jonathan Ferro, together with Lisa Abramowitz on this Payroll Friday morning. Good morning to you all. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Live on Bloomberg TV and on Bloomberg Radio. As we count you down to that payrolls report, here's the price action shaping up as follows, with equity futures drifting higher on the day, much higher on the week too. Equity futures up 22 points, positive 0.7%. In the bond market, Treasury softer, lower, yields higher, curve steeper, 10-year yield up 4 basis points to 0.86%. Just around the corner, the payrolls report in the United States of America, then immediate reaction from Jeff Rosenberg of BlackRock. On this Payrolls Friday, this is Bloomberg.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
For the Jewish Communal Fund, Noel Spiegel, former senior partner with Deloitte & Touche and past JCF president, discusses the advantages of a donor-advised fund over a private foundation.
There's a lot involved having a private foundation. You need to engage attorneys, you need to engage accountants, file tax returns. At JCF, all of that is done for you. You don't have to get involved in anything other than making your contribution to your fund and then determining which grants that you want to make.
A JCF fund may be opened with a minimum $5,000 contribution of cash or appreciated securities and can be used as an alternative to or together with a private foundation.
If you have a foundation, you have to list all of the contributions that you made. Potentially anybody, because the information is public, can find out exactly which organizations a foundation has made charitable contributions to.
Let JCF simplify your philanthropy and protect your privacy. Learn more about JCF's private client group at jcfny.org.
This is a Bloomberg.
This is a message from the government about the emergency measures to support the economy during the period of disruption caused by the coronavirus. To help you, your business, and your workers affected, you can apply for cash grants, business rate holidays, statutory sick pay relief packages, as well as the coronavirus job retention and self-employment income support schemes. For information, go to gov.uk/business-support now.
Hi, I'm Dan from NatWest Manchester branch. We know life's hard right now, but if coronavirus has affected your finances, we're doing our best to make things easier. If you're a personal customer, you can request a 3-month payment break if you're struggling with your mortgage, loan or credit card. Or if you need help with an existing arranged overdraft, you could get £500 interest-free for 3 months. Remember, every one of us is here to support you. There are lots of ways we could help. Search NatWest Coronavirus.
Eligibility and conditions apply to payment breaks. Overdraft up to your agreed limit if lower than £500.
At Lloyds Bank, we know that money is a concern for a lot of people during this time.
You just put pressure on yourself all the time. You just want to do your absolute best.
You automatically then think,
it's my fault.
Yeah, this is because I've not
done X, Y, Z.
Yeah, I've not raised them right.
Whatever's playing on your mind at the moment, Lloyds Bank, in partnership with Mental Health UK, can offer support and advice. Visit lloydsbank.com/mentalhealth.
From New York City, this is Bloomberg Surveillance. For our audience worldwide, we're live on TV and radio as we await the payroll report in the United States of America. The estimate, negative 7.5 million. The number, here's Bloomberg's Michael McKee.
John, we're just waiting for the numbers to come out here, and so far what we've seen is a few numbers underneath. Here we go. Unemployment, rose. I'm sorry, I'm a little stunned here by this number. Employment rose by 2.5 million in May, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics. The unemployment rate fell to 13.3%. I don't know what to tell you. We're going to have to look at these numbers very deeply and see exactly what is going on here. The unemployment rate declining by 1.4 percentage points. The number of unemployed people fell by 2.1. $21.2 million. The major groups here show that black unemployment let me see if I can find that here, went to 16.8%, Asians 15%, little change on the month. The white unemployment rate 12.4%. In terms of the overall statistics, average weekly hours really bounced. They go up to 34.7 from 34.2. So those who are working harder. Average hourly earnings did fall by 1% during the month. That takes the year-over-year rate down to 6.7%. Those are all distorted by what we have seen in the labor markets, people who make less falling out of the labor force. The labor force participation rate goes up to 60.8% from 60.2. And Tom, you were talking about the U6, 21.2%. That's a drop from 22.8%. So what may have happened here is the payroll protection plan may have actually helped, along with a few states starting to reopen. Although this, remember, is a survey taken during the month, during the week that begins, or that includes the 12th of the month. So it's early in May. So this does show that the U.S. economy is perhaps a lot more resilient than we anticipated. Again,
Michael McKee, it's absolutely fantastic news if it's an accurate representation of what's happening. Shocking for all the right reasons to see this number very high into positive territory. Begs the question, Mike, how was it missed? How did so many people miss such a big upward move in this economy in the middle of May?
Well, I think it's very hard to get any kind of statistics that lead into this that give you an accurate picture. When you look at the number of people who were filing jobless claims, I mean, we're over 40 million. And you figured those people are not working. Now, the unemployment rate you could sort of understand because the denominator can change given the number of people in the labor force. But in this case, the number of people in the labor force went up. And also, when you look at the number of people who got jobs, that's not really reflected anywhere. So this number is going to be a head scratcher for a lot of people. We're going to have to dig into it and find out what happened. But it does appear that the labor market is not in as bad a shape as people thought. And I'm sorry, our friend Jim Glassman said this report isn't going to tell him anything about the future. This may presage a little bit faster recovery than we had anticipated.
Michael McKee, appreciate your work. Really, really encouraging news, and we hope the data that we're still to come in the next couple of months confirms this improvement that we're seeing on the screens right now. Equity futures taking a leg higher, up by 37 points on the S&P 500, positive by 1.2%. In the bond market, we've talked about those high yields, that steeper curve. We see it right now, a 10-year yield up by 10 basis points to 0.92% at the moment. And in foreign exchange, the dollar against G10 just showing a little bit more strength against the euro dollar coming in 0.4%. Tom Keene, what an upside surprise. What a fantastic number, really encouraging. And I think in the weeks to come, we hope the data backs up the improvement that we've seen so far this morning.
That is the single greatest moment, John, I have ever seen of Michael McKee. What he did there, folks, was an absolute tour de force of the shock of these reports. And John, yes, the markets move on it, but far more importantly is the mix that came into this report, the fuzziness of different government programs, even state programs, and how they meld in. And as Mr. McKee mentioned, this will need a lot of study. We begin our study in this half hour with Jeffrey Rosenberg of BlackRock. Jeff, you know well the squishiness of how we measure labor dynamics in America. When you dive into this analysis for your market analysis, what will you search for in this shocking report?
Well, it is a surprise, and certainly the market was looking for much weaker numbers, and we're all kind of diving into the details here, but the message just appears to be about the pace of returning workers relative to the pace of additional layoffs, and that's a clear positive trend that the opening up in the economy across the various states had been better than what everyone is expecting to see out of this report. The other thing that you're seeing here is the big distributional shift that we saw in April, where we saw a kind of surprising or perverse increase in average hourly earnings. That's because you had the biggest impact from the lower worker wage coming out. You're seeing that reverse. And so that's another testament that people are getting back to work, people are returning to work, and the people who were harmed the most that really dragged down the overall payroll reports and perversely pushed up average hourly earnings, you're seeing that reverse as well. So this is clearly a good sign that the markets have kind of been telling you for a while that we're getting back to work.
Well, there's no question the markets have been leading to this kind of shock report. But when you look at the social unrest in America, Jeff Rosenberg, is this a surprise and a sense of labor stability for a small part of America that's employable versus everybody else? You mentioned distributions. What's the barbell of our labor economy right now?
Well, we've seen that for a while in terms of up until the coronavirus crisis, this had been a labor market that was benefiting the distributional aspects, meaning it was a very tight labor market. And so you saw the biggest gains coming from the lower end of the labor pool. All of that was turned upside down by the coronavirus crisis in that it had a disproportional impact where you can't simply move the job online, when you can't move to remote working. That's in many areas of service employment, retail employment, things that you had to shut down for coronavirus had the biggest impact. And that turned on its head what had been a very strong labor market. I think what we see coming out of this report is really, some signs that as we return, we're certainly going to ease the pressure relative to the extreme of no work at all. The question will remain, what comes back? How far back do we get, and how long does it take? And despite the optimism of the markets in today, there's still the case here that we have had some permanent losses of employers, some permanent losses that are not going to come back, and that will be a little bit of a darker cloud. Today it'll probably be more of the optimism, but we've got to keep in mind here that we did see some real scarring.
Jeff, I just want to sit on this moment for a minute. This is absolutely stunning for all the right reasons. A huge upside surprise that nobody was anywhere near estimating in our survey. What's the risk here now for you, Jeff, then, that we extrapolate this out, this improvement, this rate of change too far too much?
Well, the risk is in my markets, in the bond markets here, we're really at a loss for how to think about what are the levels of yields, and the issue here on the levels of yields is that it's really about the Fed saying supporting market functioning in face of an epic increase in issuance. And so the supply-demand uncertainty, well, we have more certainty on the amount of supply that's coming. We have less certainty about how much the Fed's going to be willing to support that. And so when you add to this kind of this momentum around growth and increasing yields, it creates a huge uncertainty around the shape of the curve, the pace of yield curve steepening, what exactly is the yield curve shape that the Fed is going to want to see. We're going to pivot that into that next week when we talk about the FOMC meeting. But the markets are really challenged to figure out what is the right level of yields, because it's not driven solely by these economic fundamentals like the payroll report would have done in years gone past, because we have this historic, well, it's really analogous to World War II history, but relative to our modern experience, it's a historic change in the Fed's operation with regards to what we're talking about, which is yield curve control, and what are the levels around that.
Jeff, we're speaking with Jeff Rosenberg of BlackRock, and I should just note right now we are seeing futures rising substantially. A new leg higher with the S&P futures now up 1.6%. Longer dated yields also ripping higher off this report. Currently, 10-year yields at 0.932%. So people can question the accuracy of these numbers, but what you're getting in markets is at first a hesitance and then a pile on, Jeff, as people expect this to portend good news. Can we just really go over the fact that this does not cohere with the continuing claims and the jobless reports that we're getting out of state and federal agencies over the past few weeks? There is a skepticism that one has to have when looking at these numbers. Can you explain that to us, Jeff? How much confidence can we have that this accurately portrays the picture on the ground?
Well, first, one way to sort of ascertain the uncertainty is just look at the spread of market expectations going into the report, right? So nobody had it on the positive side, but even within the negative side, you had minus 2.5 million to minus 8.5 million. I mean, we are in uncharted territory. So when you look at kind of the traditional tools that we use to predict, the plus or minus 200,000 in the payroll report, you can map those pretty clearly to the high frequency data that you get ahead of the payroll report. In this case, we're really out of a toolkit to know how to do that forecast at all. And so it is possible that the positive number here is reflecting some things in terms of the data calculation. I don't have the response rate. At least the April response rate had been in the historical averages, so that probably isn't to blame here. But we're really just in uncharted territory for knowing how to address these issues. And so what we're really capturing is the inability to forecast what returning to work and what the pace of returning to work is, and the distributional aspects that we're talking about, trying to aggregate up at one number across state-level impacts that are highly disparate, very hard to model that and to forecast that. And I think that's what we're seeing here in terms of the surprise relative to the economic forecast.
This is why we love to have Jeffrey Rosenberg on, folks. I can't convey to you the importance of the three sentences Jeffrey Rosenberg just stated there. If you're joining us just now, our simulcast worldwide on Bloomberg Television, on Bloomberg Radio, we welcome all of you. I'm not going to give you all the statistics because, as Jeff says, I don't think the statistics here matter. All you need to know is, once again, the market's out front, away from the gloom, and these are shocking and difficult statistics, but nowhere near the gloom that was expected before this report. Jeffrey, I want to go into your Carnegie Mellon mathematics there. You've used twice the word distributional. I totally agree with you that good people, and I mean this, folks, good people are trying to take blended, broad, below statistics and aggregate them up to a single reportable unemployment rate. Jeff, even in good conditions, that's impossible. How impossible is that to do right now?
Well, it's particularly challenged right now because you have a shock that is outside of anything we've seen. So remember how these forecast models are built. They're built off of historical information. They're built off of models that have some kind of intuition around how normal economic behaviors respond. And so you're really cast adrift to try to do that forecast. You're trying to pull in high frequency data. But again, because of the very specific differentiated nature of how we're reopening the economy. Think about what this labor report represents, right? It's total non-farm payroll across the entirety of the U.S. Yet look at the differences in how states have reacted. So to really kind of build that model correctly, you'd have to have state-level models filled with state-level data, and that just doesn't exist yet. And that's part of the challenge and part of the explanation, I think, for why you had first such a wide band and how this number's come outside even that very wide band to the positive side.
I'll tell you, folks, this is what Bloomberg surveillance is all about. To go from Randall Krosner to David Blanchflower, Tom Porcelli, I thought was brilliant. And then just to get lucky and have Jeff Rosenberg with us at this time to really explain the noise around this voluminous wall of statistics. It's going to be fascinating to see how this is vamped by the pro-economists and by the political voices in the coming hours, including Jonathan Farrow's conversation with Lawrence Kudlow. We need a data check because it's a big data check. I'm going to go top to bottom on it now. On the VIX, we are in almost two big figures, 23.98. We have gone from 80 in panic through 60 to 30, and just this week have ground down from 29-ish down to 23.99, a real sign of complacency. Futures up 47, Dow futures up 626. Those levels, 3157 on SPX, Dow 26,872. In the yield market, yields simply explode, except they've been exploding all week. 10-year yield out 11 beeps, 0.93. You may see a 1% 10-year yield today, or if this interpretation continues in the not too distant future. Curve steepening out to a solid 70 basis points. That's a completely different statement of the yield curve market than what we saw 5 and indeed 10 days ago. Gold plunges below 1,700. It's broken a key level down $43. 2.5% to $16.84 an ounce. Oil, a little bit of its own story, $42 on Brent crude today. Edward Morse of Citigroup in the 4 o'clock hour today. And then finally, I want to go to dollar dynamics, which is for a better America with these better statistics, a stronger dollar. Someone who's had a modest luxury of 12 minutes to interpret this is our chief international economic correspondent, Michael McKee. Michael, Michael, you and I know Scott Landman, who has a real job unlike me, and I went to Scott Landman moments ago and I said, is there an appendix that explains all this? The BLS is really good at that. Michael McKee, is there an appendix?
There's not an appendix that explains why there were so many jobs created when we expected so many losses. There are explanations for some of the statistical variations. The BLS comes into this saying that we're still misclassifying workers in the household survey. They are supposed to be considered absent from work, but on payrolls instead, they're not counted, and so therefore the overall labor force doesn't rise as much. And they say if they had been properly classified, unemployment would be 16.3%, but it would still be a very low number compared to what we were expecting. As long as I'm talking unemployment, Tom, let me give you a couple other numbers here. White unemployment falls from 14.2 to 12.4. Hispanic unemployment falls from 18.9 to 17.6. Those are still huge numbers. And the disappointing numbers, given the context of where we have been this past week, black unemployment rises to 16.8% from 16.7%. I hate to pivot to some good news in a way, but aggregate hours worked is sometimes seen as a proxy for GDP, and they rose significantly from 93.3 to 97.3, which will have economists scratching their heads, but also going back in and maybe refiguring some of their forecasts for GDP, because May was supposed to be the worst month, April, May, and if aggregate hours are trending higher, then that would be good news for total output.
Mike, I hope that this report reflects a real surge in strength and optimism that perhaps hasn't been reflected in some of the economic reports and expectations. I still am struggling to understand, Mike, the lack of coherence with the continuing claims and the initial jobless claims that we got out of states and federal governments over the past 4 weeks, and how that relates to what we're seeing in this report.
We're all struggling with that, Lisa. You know, I went to Twitter where all the experts are going to opine, and the basic message from Twitter is, well, we don't know. Everybody's going to be trying to figure out what happened here. Restaurants closed by the thousands everywhere. And even in a few states where they started to reopen, they weren't full. People were standing outside or sitting outside. But leisure and hospitality hiring went up by 1,239,000 from a loss of 7.5 million the month before. So where did all those people come back to? And the suspicion is going to be that it was the payroll protection plan, that people went back onto payrolls. And the question is, because at the moment you have to keep them on for 8 weeks, that was the limit. And are they going to start getting let go again? That's going to be an issue. Is this a high and then we fall off again? That's going to be a key question as you go forward in trying to figure out what's going on here. We did see department stores announce that they were going to be bringing back workers during the month, and we saw retailers rise by 368,000. That might be a little more stable, but it's really going to depend on whether people are not go shopping. So this tells us things were better than we thought, but I don't know how much it tells us about how good it's going to be going forward.
Well, Michael McKee, your reporting at 8:30 was absolutely extraordinary. Michael McKee, with decades of experience there, our chief international economics correspondent, just absolutely stunning. You know, Lisa, I look at where we are in the humility of this game of data. There's a thing called 1 over the square root of n, which they pound into you in statistics. And what it basically says is you better have some humility at all times in any place. That's really been a hallmark of this show for decades. And more than any other moment I can think of within economics, this morning in this jobs report is something that brings on humility.
I would agree with that. I also think there is a huge challenge when the labor market and the economy is moving this fast, when it is this hard to pinpoint what actually is going on the ground, that usually the numbers don't lie, and yet the numbers are being cast into question, and it becomes highly political. You'll have some people saying, all of you who are gloom and doom, this proves you're wrong, and then you're going to have other people saying, can we trust these numbers? And Tom, these dueling narratives will be driving the conversation going forward.
Well, there's no question. I mean, we're going to have to see how that goes. But I think Lisa, all in all, when I look at this, and this was touched on by Jonathan and by Michael as well, is even though it's a better report, it still signals a very, very difficult economics. And as Jeff Rosenberg said, the distributional and demographic shifts are tangible.
President Trump going to be speaking at the White House, we're learning, at 10 a.m. Wall Street time about this jobs report. It'll be interesting. Again, Tom, I have to think that this becomes political. This becomes a question of, has the government effectively staved off the pain that could have been had they not acted as quickly as they have? We have been seeing futures ripping higher ahead of the open on the back of this report, yields as well. Gina Martin-Adams, chief U.S. equity strategist with Bloomberg Intelligence, joining us now. Gina, my first reaction when futures did move higher was why they didn't move even more higher, given the fact that this is a massive upside surprise. What was your initial take by the equity market's response?
I think the equity market is responding appropriately. It's one number. It doesn't mean everything to the outlook, but it is a better than expected number, consistent with a trend rate of improvement, or at least less bad data that we've been getting for about a month now. Pretty consistently, we're seeing confidence or more confident data to suggest that April was likely the low for most economic data series, despite the fact that we were shut down for part of May. The recovery process in the latter part of May does appear to be lifting some of the data somewhat, and that's largely what the market has been trading on for the last several months. I mean, don't forget the equity market made its low in March, anticipating that we would start to see some green shoots in the economic data come May, June, July, and we're seeing that. So it's a confirmation of what the equity market has been trading on.
Lisa, short on time. Gina. Gina. It's about the same. Gina, short on time, and I'll be direct here. What does the higher yield structure and steepness mean for the banks? Is this a time where the banks get on fire and go, go, go?
It should be, as long as the yield curve is becoming more upward sloping, as long as you see an environment for cyclical improvement, as long as you see lesser chances for bankruptcies sort of pressing their way through the system. The financial sector is extraordinarily undervalued. I mean, it's certainly one of the cheapest sectors in the U.S. and globally extraordinarily cheap relative to the rest of the sectors, trading at incredibly suppressed price-to-book ratios. And that's largely because of anticipated bankruptcy risk. And it's a lot of concern that we would see this economic recession last for a significant period of time, which would weigh on the financial sector. So it's not all about yields. It is about reducing bankruptcy risk as economies start to recover. But it certainly doesn't hurt that the yield curve spread is widening and has been widening, confirming a better outlook emerging for the last several months.
Very good. Just thank you so much, Gina Martin-Adams. Greatly appreciated. This has been an extraordinary day, folks. I think there'll be a lot of analysis about this shock of better numbers. One person weighing in, as you can well expect, like any other president would do the same thing, is the President of the United States. This is a, quote, amazing jobs report, all caps. Of course, the president speaking at 10 a.m. Even better, before the president speaks at 10 a.m., scheduled to speak with our Jonathan Farrell will be his national economic advisor, Lawrence Kudlow. I think that will be a positive report as well. We need to thank all of our guests. It has been just an extraordinary Bloomberg surveillance this morning. Stay with us. More ahead on Bloomberg Television and Bloomberg Radio.
Why do hedge funds?
People's Postcode Lottery's 30k a day is back. £30,000 will be won every single day by players in the July draws. That's £30,000 for every player in the winning postcode. Visit postcodelottery.co.uk/radio before midnight on the 18th of June to play in the July draws. PPL managed lotteries on behalf of good causes. 16 plus conditions apply. Play responsibly.
Where will 2020 take you? Somewhere where people care. About each other. About our planet. About creating a better world for everyone. And becoming the best versions of yourselves. Join a community of like-minded individuals at the University of Winchester. Make sure to accept your offer by the UCAS deadline and visit our website to find out more. See the bigger picture. Be the difference. Go to winchester.ac.uk.
TfL has a plan to help London reopen carefully, safely and sustainably. You can do your bit by continuing to work from home if you can and avoiding public transport. If you must use public transport, avoid peak hours, wear a face covering and wash your hands before and after travel. For everyone's safety, we regularly clean our services with antiviral disinfectant and will be providing hand sanitizer across our network. For more information, search TfL's Restart Plan. To the Mayor of London and TfL, every journey matters.
In case you didn't know, TuneIn lets you listen to the same radio stations you pick up on your home or car radio, except you can hear them from anywhere. If you want to find a station from somewhere else in the world, navigate to the By Location section under Browse. Keep exploring with TuneIn.
Okay, here we go.
With the NFL draft in the books and the schedule set, check out a TuneIn podcast for daily updates on the lead up to the 2020 season, like the Ringer NFL Show, where a rotating cast of Ringer experts talk with players, coaches, and special guests about the NFL landscape.
A lot of the other teams that we consider...
Or ESPN's NFL Live.
If there are some delays because of the COVID-19...
Search sports on TuneIn to explore these pods and much more.
You love TuneIn for live-breaking news from CNN, MSNBC, Fox, CNBC, and more. But when you can't catch your favorite show as it airs, it might just be a click away as a podcast. Search your favorite news station to explore all the on-demand news shows on TuneIn.
With the NHL season temporarily on ice, now is a good time to catch up on past games. With Game Replay on TuneIn, you can hear every matchup of the 2019-2020 season so far. And for a limited time, it's free for hockey fans everywhere. Search classic Game Replays to start listening.
Are you ready for the realest first-hand take of what's happening in the NBA? On their podcast, All the Smoke, former NBA players Matt Barnes and Steven Jackson bring their fiery intensity to the mic, dishing on the latest news and drama from on and off the court without boundaries.
Half man, half amazing. My friend, our brother, Vince Carter, man, welcome to the show.
Yo, what's up, man? What's up, my brother? Man,
Search All the Smoke on TuneIn to listen. Let's be honest, we all spend too much of our day on social media. But at least you can spend your endless scroll time to discover new things on TuneIn. Follow @TuneIn on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram to always be in the know about the best new stuff streaming in the app. From breaking news stories and live sporting events.
Yeah, but it's unique times. I think there's unique circumstances, and we're trying
to stand out stations and podcasts. Stay in touch with TuneIn.
The first time.
We always talk about the losers in a trade war.
You benefit if you're just further away from China.
So that you can too.
What are the ramifications if she crumbles or doesn't crumble?
Bloomberg Radio, the Bloomberg Business, Radio.com, and iHeartRadio apps, and BloombergRadio.com. Bloomberg, the world is listening. From the financial capital of the world, 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, on the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is Bloomberg Radio. This is Bloomberg Surveillance Economics.
There's no other way to say the world economy is in awful shape.
Whether it's a few months or 18 months, eventually it will come to an end. The economy will revive.
Finance.
Many people take the Fed to task. I think the Fed should be applauded.
We only have limited tools. It's up to the fiscal authorities to do something about it.
Investment.
In a couple of years from now, things are going to be back to probably where they were at the very beginning.
Bloomberg Surveillance with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney on Bloomberg Radio.
Good Friday morning from New York City and points beyond to our worldwide audience. It is Jobs Friday, and what a jobs number we received this morning. And a shocking reversal. The U.S. labor market actually added jobs, and the unemployment rate actually fell. Equity futures are certainly reflecting the better than expected jobs numbers, with the S&P futures up nearly 1.5% this morning. Let's get some more color on that jobs number. Bloomberg News' strategist Vince Signorella. Vince, what did you make of these numbers? Oh, Vinny Del Giudice. I'm sorry, Vinny Del Giudice. Yeah, what do you make of these numbers?
It's the other Vinny. Well, the U.S. economy, it looks like it's starting to reverse job losses. A 2.5 million gain in May after April's historic loss of 20.5 million, so about a tenth. Unemployment down to 13.3% from 14.7%. Economists, this is a surprise, had expected unemployment to top 19 million. Now, this surprising data suggests the economy, again, may be picking up after the darkest days of the coronavirus outbreak. But make no mistake, the levels for now still echo data from the Great Depression. Last week, for example, states received almost 2 million jobless claims. And Federal Reserve officials have warned unemployment will remain high into 2021, while public health officials have warned, and we should emphasize this, have warned we could get a second wave of the COVID-19 virus. I'm Vinny Del Giudice, Bloomberg Radio.
Vinny, thank you so much. We appreciate that. Dave Wilson, Bloomberg Stocks editor, looking at the tape here, a real positive response to those numbers this morning here in the futures. What are you looking at?
Tell you, if you want to talk positive, Paul, just look at what's going on with the travel stocks in today's trading. You know, we'll start with the airlines. They're soaring for a second day after Americans said the number of flights will increase 74% in July from June's schedule. Americans, the most active stock in early trading, it's up about 31%, and that's on top of yesterday's record gain of 41%. You look at Delta, it's up 17%, United up 26.5%, and just to put all this in context, the NYSE Arca Airline Index is already up almost 30% this week, and that's before today's gain, so it's headed even higher. Talk about higher, you certainly see that with the cruise lines as well. I mean, Carnival's up more than 15%, even though it's AIDA Cruises line canceled trips for the rest of the year. You know, you've got Royal Caribbean shares and Norwegian also with double-digit 10% plus percentage gains in early trading. You look at the hotels, Marriott International up 6.5%, Hilton Worldwide up 8.5%, and Hyatt Hotels up 9.5%. Maybe the most telling sort of thing, Hertz Global Holdings, a rental car company, up 91%. The stock has made back all of its losses since the company filed for Chapter 11 bankruptcy about 2 weeks ago. That's quite the turnaround. Now we turn elsewhere and look at companies affected by earnings. You've got Broadcom up 2.5%. The chipmaker rebounded from losses that followed the release of fiscal second quarter results late yesterday. Profit matched the analyst average estimate in Bloomberg survey. Broadcom said it's expecting some strength in data center equipment. Smartphone demand, though, components for those devices, they're looking for weakness there. Slack Technologies, you want to talk about weakness, down 17%. The maker of business communication software withdrew its annual forecast for billings, or the amount billed to customers. The move signaled Slack may not benefit as much from a shift to working from home as investors have expected. You have Cooper Companies down 8%. The contact lens makers' earnings and sales for the fiscal second quarter were well below projections. You got Gap up 3%. Now, the apparel retailer said it's reviewing its real estate holdings. It's going to cut capital spending for the current fiscal year by about 50%. All this coming after Gap posted wider loss and lower revenue for the fiscal first quarter than analysts expected. And one more for you, Zoom Info Technologies up 5.5%. The provider of business intelligence is extending yesterday's surge of 62% after a $935 million initial public offering.
Bloomberg Stocks editor Dave Wilson. Dave, thank you so much. We appreciate that update on a very busy morning here with the jobs numbers coming out, equity futures just ripping, just adding to the, I think, the Pandora of news out there. We've got the pandemic, obviously. We've got the civil unrest that is roiling across the country. We are fortunate right now to have Margaret Brennan, host of Face the Nation on the CBS television network Sunday morning, on the CBS television network, and on Bloomberg Radio Sunday afternoon. Margaret, what are you guys going to lead with this Sunday?
Well, we just learned that the Attorney General, Bill Barr, will be joining us on Sunday.
Okay.
And so a lot of questions to put to him about what is going on and what will be happening on Sunday morning. I don't think we know what we're going to wake up to necessarily. There are projections of mass protests here in the nation's capital, but also around the country as George Floyd's memorial service stretches into days of mourning, marking reflections on police brutality and racial strife in this country. And I think all of us are wondering what happens next and how law enforcement is going to respond to this. The Attorney General faced a lot of criticism for his order to have federal officers disperse peaceful protesters in front of the White House this week.
Yeah, so Margaret, on that front, I mean, there seems to be some disconnect within the administration between, say, President Trump and his Secretary of Defense, Mr. Esper. Where does that stand right now?
Well, that was specifically on the issue of the Insurrection Act, that idea of using active duty military to intervene and try to calm some of these protests. They would argue, some would argue that's a real dangerous intervention of authority. Been deployed. They've been on activation, sort of on standby right now here in the nation's capital, which is such an unusual place because we're not a state. The National Guard is out in force from all sorts of areas of the country. We also have federal officers who are here who report up to the Attorney General. So it's a very unusual display of force, and it raises a lot of legal questions.
Margaret Brennan, Tom Keene, New York. Morning. I look, Margaret Brennan, at the events of the last 4, 5, and 6 days, and what's so great about CBS is you have a pulse across the nation. It is a deeply divided nation. Our Kevin Cirilli has really made that his primary topic of the week. Based on the anecdote that the CBS network sees, how divided is it? I mean, there's a core group that strongly supports the president in putting up those fences around the White House, isn't there?
Well, the president's core group of support is immovable. He is incredibly popular within his own party, which is also why you could name on one hand the number of Republicans who have felt that they could speak out against him, even when they disagreed with him. And so that is continued. What we know from the latest CBS News polling is that when it comes to the specific issue of race and how the president has handled it, he only got a 33% approval rating. And the question is there a political cost ultimately when it comes to November? And does this outpouring of emotion we're seeing add up into a movement, into some kind of political force? And does it get activated at the ballot box?
Mojave Yunus was on the other day, Margaret Brennan from Gallup poll, and he talked about the president's negatives. You and I have talked about this over the year. How do you interpret negative ratings for any given candidate, whether it's the vice president Biden or the president Trump? How do negatives click into this?
Well, it ultimately comes down to the denominator. It ultimately comes down to the turnout. It ultimately comes down to who is motivated to show up, because you have those core supporters who can be banked on, and it's about everyone else in the middle. It's about the independents. And so that's always the question, and where we focus our attention on is how do you get those who don't necessarily identify with a party, the independents, come out and turn up and move the needle a little bit off of the polls, because we are so increasingly polarized. So that's how I kind of look at it, because it feels like, we haven't had the approval for the president above 50% for most of his presidency. And yet there is no expectation that he will face a challenger within his own party for the nomination when that Republican convention is held this summer.
Margaret, are you surprised we haven't seen Mr. Biden have a higher profile here, given all the discord that we're seeing in this country?
Well, look, it's such an incredibly unusual news environment. So it's hard to say what would be the expectation in a pandemic. But I think there is a demand and an expectation and a vacancy, frankly, on the leadership front that a lot of people are calling for a higher profile presence by the Democratic, presumed Democratic nominee, Joe Biden. He just recently left his home because of the stay-at-home order. He was trying to recognize and adjust to those medical recommendations to contrast himself with the president and to set a good example. But I do think there's a thirst to hear more. We'll see what happens in terms of his selection of a vice presidential candidate. Does that person take on more of the campaigning when that happens? But from the campaign, we're hearing that wouldn't be until August 1st. And so that leaves a lot of time But of course, as you and I know, there are about 100,000 news cycles between now and next Friday.
Exactly. Margaret Brennan, thank you so much. Of course, Margaret Brennan, Face the Nation, this Sunday morning on the CBS television network. You can hear Margaret Brennan this weekend on Bloomberg Radio as well. Listen to Face the Nation Sunday at 2 p.m. in New York, Washington, D.C., and Bloomberg 1061 Boston Newburyport. That's Face the Nation this Sunday at 2 on Bloomberg Radio. Tom.
Paul, thanks so much. Bloomberg Surveillance this morning, brought to you by Cohn Resnick Advisory Assurance Tax. For ideas to stabilize your business and find opportunity amid uncertainty, visit the Cohn Resnick Coronavirus Resource Center at cohnresnick.com/COVID-19. And now with our news in Washington, here's Amy Morris.
All right, thank you, Tom. President Trump will be holding a news conference on that jobs report that you've been discussing. That happens in less than 1 hour at 10 a.m. Wall Street time. You can hear it live here on Bloomberg Radio. The White House is surrounded and fortified. The Secret Service has extended the security fencing around the White House, putting more distance between protesters and the president. The additional tall fencing and concrete barriers were installed along 17th Street and Pennsylvania Avenue near the Eisenhower Executive Office Building. The Secret Service says the entire ellipse on the south end of the White House, E Street, between 15th and 17th, and all of Lafayette Park will be closed until next Wednesday. The American Civil Liberties Union has sued the Trump administration, alleging that officials violated civil rights of protesters who were forcefully removed from a park near the White House by police using chemical agents before the president walked over to a nearby church for a photo op. That lawsuit was filed arguing that the president, Attorney General William Barr, and other officials unlawfully conspired to violate the protesters' rights when clearing out that park on Monday. The Attorney General, Barr, has defended the decision to forcefully remove peaceful protesters, saying that it was necessary to protect officers and federal property. And a new poll from ABC News and Ipsos finds only 32% of Americans approve of President Trump's reaction in the aftermath of the death of George Floyd. 66% of Americans disapprove. The president has faced fierce criticism this week from top military officials and Republican senators. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg.
Amy, thanks so much. Greatly appreciate that. We say good morning to all of you across this nation, in Washington, and Amy Morris is Washington, in Boston, in New York as well. Futures up 63, Dow futures up 748. Worldwide, this is Bloomberg.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology, makes innovation happen. The university helped biomedical engineering professor Tara Alvarez launch a startup that may revolutionize vision therapy.
Our startup through NJIT is called Oculomotor Technology. We create virtual reality vision therapy in a head-mounted display. So it's gaming, and basically we're sugarcoating the therapy so that children and young adolescents don't even realize they're doing therapy. To accomplish this, we need biomedical engineers, which are here on NJIT campus, computer scientists, artists, people that are into story development, and then we're collaborating with a lot of the large pediatric medical centers. This idea of a startup culture is extremely important to not just NJIT and the National Science Foundation, but also to the U.S. as a societal whole.
NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology. Learn more at njit.edu.
Not completing high school is more of a social thing than it was an academic thing. I came out in the 11th grade. Nobody was embracing you. The kids were cruel. It was very difficult to be gay. Even though all these years have passed, I still had that longing to have my diploma. The hard part was determining that I was going to do it, but I definitely didn't do it alone.
At age 30, with the help of her mentor, Carissa finished her high school diploma.
I have a mentor, Maria. She convinced me to continue my education and to finish what I started to get my diploma. Just never judges. She's a true role model. If you're even considering getting your high school diploma, go get it. You can do it.
No one gets a diploma alone. If you're thinking of finishing your high school diploma, you have help. Find free adult education classes near you at finishyourdiploma.org. That's finishyourdiploma.org. Brought to you by the Dollar General Literacy Foundation and the Ad Council.
Influential conversations from Bloomberg Television.
For the friendships, for the fresh air, for the space to grow, for the knowledge, for the sport, for the outdoor education, For the wide horizons, for the academic excellence, for the future. Unleash your child's education at West Buckland School, a co-educational day and boarding school in beautiful North Devon. If you're moving to the southwest for a better quality of life, this is education without compromise, in what the Good Schools Guide called a gem of a school in an exceptional location. To see for yourself, find us at westbuckland.com.
Emma, the UK's most awarded mattress in 2019. Try it out for 200 nights risk-free. Made in the UK. Go to emmamattress.co.uk to order now.
The IBM Flash storage solution can be broken down into 3 S's. Speed. Retrieve data fast. Scalability. Grow your storage as your business grows. Simplicity. Easily migrate and integrate with existing systems. Oh, and there's a 4th. It's surprisingly affordable, with a recommended monthly price of £200 for 26 terabytes. Order by the 30th of June and pay nothing for 90 days. Visit ibm.biz/flash offer now.
Breaking news 24 hours a day at Bloomberg.com, the Bloomberg Business app, and on Quick Take by Bloomberg. This is a Bloomberg Business Flash.
And I'm Karen and U.S. stock index futures extended gains and losses for treasuries deepened after a better-than-forecast jobs report and amid expectations for more global stimulus. We check the markets every 15 minutes throughout the trading day on Bloomberg. S&P futures up 64 points, Dow futures up 762, NASDAQ futures up 58. The DAX in Germany's up 2.6%. 10-year treasury down 28.30 seconds, yield 0.91%, and the yield on the 2-year 0.22%. NYMEX crude oil is up 4%, up $1.48 at $38.89 a barrel. COMEX gold is down 2.5%, down $43.20 at $16.84.10 an ounce. The euro 1.1309 against the dollar, the yen 109.66. And the U.S. labor market did unexpectedly rebound in May, signaling the economy is picking up faster than thought from the depths of the damage from the coronavirus pandemic. Non-farm payrolls rising by 2.5 million after a 20.7 million tumble the prior month. That was the largest on records back to 1939. The jobless rate fell to 13.3%. That's a Bloomberg Business Flash. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thanks so much. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene from New York. On the break, folks, I was reading through my first thick analysis of all this data and the shock that the president has noted, and also Secretary Mnuchin and others. And I can only say the gross two numbers are we have gone 23 million down, and we have wonderfully come back all of 3 million. So that sort of gives you the vector here. Now, it's much more complicated than that. There'll be tons of interpretation on this. Paul Sweeney, I look forward to Michael Ferroli and the team at J.P. Morgan. Obviously, John Hatzius and the troops at Goldman Sachs. Really looking forward to what Tom Porcelli says at RBC Capital Market. The guy that's so great about this out to 5 digits is John Herman. Paul has made a cottage science of granularity. And I can't wait to see what Mr. Herman says about it. Just extraordinary.
Exactly,
folks.
Tom.
And the revisions are there, and, we'll have much more on this in the coming days. Right now, the effectiveness on the bond market, we speak with a wise one, Ira Jersey, who understands I'm not buying the 10-year yield till it gets to 1%, which is 3 or 4 years away, except maybe by the end of this interview. Ira Jersey's head of fixed income for all of Bloomberg Intelligence. Ira, yields are up. What's its signal?
Yeah, so obviously, like you mentioned, better than expected report. Yields were up even before this report came out, and in part because you had decent equities, but also positioning is really being unwound quickly. So it's like you said, Tom. It's hard to like Treasury yields when you had the 10-year yield at 70 basis points, and maybe an economy that is going to rebound, maybe not so much this year, but over the next couple of years. So the market has steepened. So the 10-year yield and the 30-year yield has been rising much faster than, say, 5-year yields or 2-year yields, and that's a signal that the market is thinking that we are going to come back to some semblance of a okay economy in the future. Not necessarily this year, but in 2021, 2022, looking for better growth and inflation prospect.
So, Ira, this number was such a huge miss. Some people are saying they've never seen it in their careers before, but it appears like the bond market is kind of taking it at face value.
Yeah, well, so the bond market has sold off, and it's certainly, looking at all of the data and all the caveats that the Bureau of Labor Statistics gave us, it's still a better than expected report. Maybe not the 10 million better than expected, but even 7 million better than expected would be a huge improvement. So, looking at the internals of the data, been studying this now for maybe half an hour. There's things like a lack of respondents in some of the surveys. There's maybe people who are misclassified as being absent from work instead of unemployed and on furlough, right? So some of the data has to be taken with a grain of salt. And I think over time, as they revise the data, we'll see what the real data is. But certainly from a market perspective, the market likes this because regardless of how you cut it, it's a good report, or at least better than expectations.
Do we get a real yield for all the retirees listening to this program? I mean, if I get higher yields, I see no indication, Ira Jersey, that I actually get a return on my money, or am I wrong?
Yeah, so I think real yields as the market looks at this, as the market recovers and we get better growth. We're talking about tips, 10-year tips, real yields being at zero, with inflation break-evens maybe moving up to 1.5% for 10-year inflation break-even. So you're talking about a 1.5% nominal Treasury yield, basically zero real yield.
Great.
And that's an environment where, well, it doesn't sound that good, Tom, and I know that people won't like it, but the reality is that there is a speed limit to how fast the economy is going to be able to grow and get out of this malaise that's going to still persist for at least a number of years after the whole economy reopens.
Paul, futures are up 66. Dow futures are up 763. Should I begin to unload that triple leveraged all cash position? Is now the time?
I think it's been good for you over the years. Stick with it.
It's been good for me.
So, Ira, how do you think the Fed's going to view this data point? Yes, it's just one data point, but boy, what a data point it is.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they'll be optimistic. They might say that there's some green shoots, but I still think that they'll continue to be cautious, and still say that they're going to keep monetary policy very easy until such time as it's clear that their goals can be met, which won't be this year, as I mentioned. But I do think that from the fiscal side of things, there'll be a question as to if and when there should be a next new round of fiscal stimulus, because realistically, the Fed's going to say that they can do more, but in reality, the Fed itself has done about all that they can. They need help from the Treasury Department and Congress to do significantly more to help the American economy.
Ira, thank you so much. Ira Jersey, head of all fixed income, Bloomberg Intelligence. Just a really remarkable day. Paul, we're beginning to get in glimmers of reports, and what I would say to our audience, with futures up 700 Dow points and the yield market on a tear, gold well under 1,700 at the ounce, is, Paul, like never in my life, all my radars up. It is a wonderfully constructive report away from the horrific gloom that we've seen economically, the gloom that all of our families are living in different ways. But the idea that this is an all clear to a better economy, I just think is nonsensical on the first look I have at the granularity of the data.
Yeah, I think you're right, Tom. But I think the way the market's looking at it is like, okay, we think we've seen the bottom. There's a lot of data points that suggest that that April time frame from a lot of economic indicators was the bottom, and now we can start laying in a bottom and start trying to dig out of this, and that lays the foundation for better, Qs 3 and 4 in terms of GDP.
There's no question we dig out of this. In fact, frankly, folks, I'm optimistic about that. But I just find remarkable the density of data that's a mystery within this report. There's no mystery to the markets. Futures up big and the VIX driving well under 25. Please stay with us. We need to get those markets open. This is Bloomberg.
Asset managers who seize change to launch new strategies, add distribution channels, or exploit new technology to re-engineer the investor experience are often rewarded. However, in an industry paralyzed with complexity, few act with agility or decisively. Few run their business strategically. Yet, the most competitive managers in the market know with the right partner and a flexible operating platform, you can. Go boldly toward change with SEI Investment Manager Services.
I'm Steve Meyer, president of SEI's Investment Manager Services. At SEI, we understand the emerging forces that will define success for asset managers and what firms will need to compete tomorrow. That's why we continually optimize SEI's global operating platform. If your business requires greater agility, our advanced technology, integrated best-in-class systems, and multi-asset expertise can be your catalyst for business transformation.
With SEI Investment Manager Services, you lead the charge in a competitive marketplace. Learn more at SEIC.com/seize change.
Business is constantly evolving. Is your financial printer evolving to keep ahead of the curve? At Command Financial, we are redefining financial printing by providing industry-leading expertise, leveraging technology, and honing processes and best practices. Every day, Command helps SEC registrants, as well as members of their working groups, including securities attorneys and investment bankers, prepare, file, and disseminate regulatory and disclosure documents, such as registration statements, M&A documents, and mutual fund prospectuses and reports. Command provides a full range of services to help you effectively complete your deal, meet your disclosure requirements, and achieve your shareholder communications objectives. Visit our website at commandfinancial.com and learn how we're evolving, not only with the times, but also with your business requirements. Command Financial, redefining financial printing.
This is a Bloomberg Money Minute. The U.S.
If you can build that flat-pack wardrobe without looking at the instructions, you've still got it. If you can manage 5 keepy uppies on your first go, you've without question still got it. If you can toss a pancake to the ceiling and not let it hit the floor, surely you've still got it. And if you can just about fit into those jeans you bought 5 years ago, you've definitely still got it. Brute, still got it.
The IBM Flash storage solution can be broken down into 3 S's. Speed, retrieve data fast. Scalability, grow your storage as your business grows. Simplicity, easily migrate and integrate with existing systems. Oh, and there's a 4th. It's surprisingly affordable, with a recommended monthly price of £200 for 26 terabytes. Order by the 30th of June and pay nothing for 90 days. Visit ibm.biz/flash offer now.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are working to
get things moving.
Sending spices to novice cooks.
Hairbands to kids.
Desks for home offices.
Delivering the goods.
Shipping footballs. Fruit trees.
And dishwashers.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
Broadcasting live from the Bloomberg Interactive Broker Studio in New York. Bloomberg 1130 to Washington, D.C. Bloomberg 99.1 to Boston. Bloomberg 106.1 to San Francisco. Bloomberg 960 to the country. Sirius XM Channel 119 and around the globe. The Bloomberg Business app and BloombergRadio.com. This is Bloomberg Surveillance.
Good morning, I'm Karen Moscow, along with Tom Keene and Paul Sweeney. And the opening bell brought to you by SEI. Crisis emphasized character and partnership. One mission, one community, SEI. Go to SEIC.com/IMS. The S&P 500 higher at the open, up 1.9% or 59 points at 3171. Dow Jones Industrial average up 2.6% or 691 points at 26,976. And the Nasdaq's up 0.9% or 87 points at 9703. 10-year Treasury down 23/30 seconds, yield 0.90%, and the yield on the 2-year 0.21%. NYMEX crude oil up 3.8%, up $1.43 at 38.84 a barrel. COMEX gold down 2.25% or $38.70 at 16.8870 an ounce. The euro 1.1320 against the dollar. The yen 109.59. Tom and Paul.
Karen, thanks so much. We'll do extra data checks here through the half hour to keep you abreast of the markets. Paul wants to create some agony for me. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene. And what we're going to do here, because this is totally unfair to Tiffany Wilding. She and every other frontline economist are going to go, folks. And, the media, and I'm as guilty of this as anyone, we cite like 3 statistics, and if we're sophisticated, Paul, we'll cite a 4th. They're looking at like 85 statistics, trying to get a matrix, a feeling, the American labor economy. Tiffany, I really want to shout out to Zero Hedge, who's got a great summary going on right now. With the revisions, job losses have averaged 6.5 million per month over the past 3 months. I mean, is this a point where you take this monthly study and you smooth it out to a moving average? Do you take it as a one-off that you discard, or do you take it and climb on board optimism?
Well, I think you have to look at this report as telling you that we could be, the probability that we're recovering faster than maybe many people expected is maybe a higher probability than we thought before. So I think that there's always been a lot of caution around the extent to which people can, the labor market can kind of efficiently reallocate once people are laid off. Will those people become long-term unemployed? Will they be able to get hired back? I think what this report tells us is that maybe more of those people than we thought and more quickly than we thought will actually be hired back. I think one thing that that does come out of this is that some of the things that the programs that the government has implemented, like the payroll protection program, maybe those things are working a lot better than we thought. So that program actually incentivizes businesses to rehire back people, so they can get loans from the government that ultimately will become grants. So I think this report suggests that those kinds of policies maybe are much more impactful than maybe many people thought.
So, Tiffany, how do you kind of square, I guess what I'm trying to do is kind of square the jobless claims numbers that we've seen over the last 4, 5, 6 weeks with this number we saw today? Is it the moderation of jobless claims? Does that explain the fact that we added 2.5 million jobs versus the consensus of losing 7.5 million?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. So I think you have to be a little bit careful about the initial claims numbers, because many people they'll apply. They might apply more than once. They might get rejected. So those numbers can actually be inflated. But if you look at continuing claims still, we had a pretty big increase in continuing claims. Certainly not as much as last month, but that actually underscores how good this report was. Because the fact that around 3 million people, if you just look at the state continuing claims numbers, actually lost their jobs, the fact that this number is a net number, it suggests that over 3 million people had to gain employment, to get that, the total change in employment to be positive.
Is furlough in your textbooks? Or what we're arguing about here is people that were laid off. They're a statistic. They created claims, whatever. But business really meant it when they said this new word, furlough. A lot of people were laid off or fired and weren't laid off or fired. They were furloughed. I can't spell it, but there it is. Furloughed. Tiffany, what's furlough mean to PIMCO?
Yeah, I think that's true. And I think one thing is that the Labor Department reports and the questions that are asked don't really properly capture furloughs. So the kind of rules around the surveys are that if you weren't paid, whether you were on furlough or not, but you weren't paid, you're going to be counted as unemployed. So, many of those unemployed workers, could have been on furlough. They could have still been receiving benefits, and they could have, still been very connected to their employers. But they wouldn't been counted as the unemployed. I think we're seeing some of that in this report as well.
Paul, I can't tell you how unusual this is. If you're just joining us, folks, Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene trying to piece together the oddest labor report in my umpteen years of doing this. And folks, there's been some, real emotion over the years around certain events like September 11th of 2001 and, other moments like the financial crisis, Paul. But I just really want to underscore to people, I don't want to hear a lot of certitude right now, Paul. Yeah. I just want to see adults like Tiffany Wilding do the romantic analysis that nobody sees on television.
Do the math,
radio.
Exactly right. So, Tiffany, what do you think this report will mean to the Federal Reserve?
Well, I mean, obviously no one wants to overreact to any one report, and it has to be taken into broader context. I mean, the unemployment rate, obviously surprised consensus. I think the Bloomberg consensus was around 20%. Clearly a big surprise for that, but it's still 13%, which is very high historically. So there's still a lot of question around the recovery. I just think that, the good news is that maybe we're, at least the labor market isn't sinking into the depths than we previously expected. So I think, the forecasters include... Sorry, go ahead.
I don't mean to cut you off, Tiffany, but I'm all riled up here after the week we've had in New York. I mean, I know you're out in Newport Beach over a pina colada enjoying the view. Tiffany, come on. It has been a week of historic unrest. There's that 12-foot high fence that Attorney Barr has around, the broader White House. Margaret Brennan interviewing Attorney Barr on Face the Nation. You'll hear that on Bloomberg Radio Sunday afternoon. Tiffany, come on. We're not measuring America. I think we're measuring like jobs at Boeing, jobs at Bloomberg, jobs at PIMCO. Okay, great. Are we capturing the unemployed, the sort of employed? I hate this phrase, Paul. 3, 2, 1. The gig economy?
There you go.
Are we measuring it, Tiffany?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's some question around the extent to which you do measure the gig economy in these surveys. That's absolutely true. And note that on claims, we've actually seen the pandemic program claims, which were a part of the CARES Act, which were basically geared towards the gig economy because many of them don't, they can't get the usual unemployment claims from states. They're not eligible. Those kinds of claims actually shot up quite a bit during the month. I think the household survey actually maybe does a little bit better of a job, although, it's difficult to know how much they capture the gig economy. The household survey does capture that, and the household survey was also pretty good. I mean, there's nothing really that you can, you can say in terms of the surprise, at least, that was bad about this report. The participation rate increased a little bit on the household survey, and payrolls or employment also increased quite a bit.
Yeah. Terrific work, Tiffany Wild. Thank you so much. Greatly appreciated with PIMCO this morning. I'm gonna move on my phone here. I've got a button, Paul. Vet Bill's got to hold my hand here while I go do a data check here. Paul, what do you do if you've missed a market like this? I mean, you and I know the math, and that it's hard to get back into a market when you get out. But I'm looking at the market's open up 730 points, Dow 27,000. Maybe we get the 3,200 SPX today. The VIX under 24. If you're not there for these lifts, Paul, it's really tough to get back in and break even on return, isn't it?
It really is. I was just pulling out the old HP 12C on my phone, Tom, and we're 6% below the peak in the S&P 500. Just imagine that. I mean, it's extraordinary. Given what we know is out there in terms of the economy, we have 13% unemployment. Yes, that's better than we were expecting, but still 13% unemployment. Plus, we've got, a brutal GDP print coming up here for the second quarter, and there's a lot of uncertainty as to the pandemic, which we haven't spoken a lot about the virus in this past week, Tom, with all the civil unrest, but there's still that risk of the pandemic and the second wave potentially later in the year. So there's a lot of uncertainty here. Right. The market, again, on the S&P, 6% below its peak. I'm looking at the Dow, Tom. Where do we peak out at the Dow? 29,000 and change. Here we are at 27,000 on the Dow here. So, boy, if you've not gotten back in, it's going to be awful difficult to do it here.
We welcome you to Bloomberg Surveillance. It's a nerd fest. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene going back and forth with our HP 12C calculators. Paul, I calculate I have 13,000 in my big investment account, not the little one, the big one, and I'm making 3% with that leveraged, triple leveraged all cash fund. So 5 years from now, I'm going to have $15,070.
There you go.
56 cents, and I could sleep at night. And I could sleep at night. Just absolutely amazing. Paul, seriously, and a major shout out to Gina Martin Adams, who's just been brilliant on this. It's just, you just find a wall of worry, Paul.
You do.
And you climb it.
You do, and it's the conviction to stay in the market here. That's kind of what we've heard from Barry Ritholtz all throughout this process, which is have your long-term plan, stick with it, and you'll be fine over time. And boy, was he right. Once again, kind of as we think about the gyrations we've seen in the market since the beginning of March to here.
Yeah, let's go to somebody who's making money. Her portfolio is 120% in Amazon. With our news in Washington, here's Amy Morris.
All right, Tom, thank you so much. We are standing by now to hear from President Trump talking about the jobs numbers that you've been talking about. The president is expected to hold a news conference just minutes from now at 10 a.m. Wall Street time. You can hear it live here on Bloomberg Radio. The Secret Service has extended the security fencing around the White House, putting more distance between protesters and the president. This additional tall fencing and the concrete barriers were installed along Pennsylvania Avenue. This is near the Eisenhower Executive Office building. The Secret Service says the entire ellipse on the south end of the White House and all of Lafayette Park are all closed until next Wednesday. Several hundred active duty troops brought in to help with the civil unrest in the nation's capital are leaving Washington, D.C. This is just a day after they initially planned to stay. A defense official says the soldiers with the 82nd Airborne Division who have been kept at military bases just outside Washington, D.C. are now returning to Fort Bragg, North Carolina. The Senate Judiciary Committee has advanced the nomination of 38-year-old judge and ally of Senate Majority Leader Mitch McConnell to serve on a federal appeals court. This was done despite Democrats' objections that Justin Walker is not experienced and biased against the Obama health care law. And Twitter has blocked a Trump campaign video tribute to George Floyd over a copyright claim. The move adds to tensions between Twitter and President Trump, who is one of its most widely followed users. Global news 24 hours a day on air and on Quick Take by Bloomberg, powered by more than 2,700 journalists and analysts in more than 120 countries. I'm Amy Morris. This is Bloomberg. Tom and Paul.
Amy, thanks so much. The Dow up 725 points, 725, 27,004 on the Dow. The VIX comes in with a vengeance, two big figures, 23.75. To frame that, long-term average 20. The glory days of February were a 15, a 14, a 13 VIX. We blew out to 80 in the doom and gloom and down to 23.7 before. What else can I tell you? How about the yield space, as they call it? 0.89% in the 10-year yield. I'm not in the 1% watch yet, but that gets my attention. 1.70% on a 30-year bond. Gold, $16.82 an ounce, down $45. That's down at least $50, maybe off the peak of this week. Brent crude, a story of its own.
Yep.
Brent crude, $41.82. Paul, round that up to $42. Paul Sweeney and Tom Keene, the president at 10 a.m. Stay with us on the American economy. This is Bloomberg.
This is a Bloomberg Pursuits look at luxury. One of the world's most coveted collectible coins is coming to the market. The 1787 Brasher doubloon, the first gold coin struck in the U.S., is being offered privately at a $15 million asking price by a former Wall Street executive. Deals in the $4 billion U.S. rare coin market are often done privately with prices kept mum. Not keeping mum, high-fashion brands such as Versace, Saint Laurent, and Gucci, who have posted messages pledging solidarity with the Black Lives Matter movement after recent lootings. It's a dicey public relations move. Brands are trying to gain credibility and rewrite their own past race controversies, despite the risk of appearing crass. Also rewriting the script, Hollywood. To restart halted productions while protecting against coronavirus, Hollywood heavyweights are recommending that scripts be changed to minimize touching, and that filmmakers use computer-generated images to replace real-life interactions on screen. Visit BloombergPursuits.com for more. I'm Andrew O'Day, Bloomberg Radio.
Elite advisory firms rely on BNY Mellon's Pershing to meet the needs of their most complex clients. Karen Novak, Chief Operating Officer at Pershing Advisor Solutions, explains how.
At BNY Mellon's Pershing, we bring customized insights and strategies to help you grow your advisory business and stay on the leading edge. We can support the needs of your most sophisticated clients with a full range of investment and wealth management solutions, from access to private banking to consolidated bank and brokerage custody. Learn why so many of the largest advisory firms turn to us for the financial strength and high-touch service that BNY Mellon's Pershing can provide. Are you well positioned to stand out from your competition?
Learn more at Pershing.com or call 800-445-4467. Brokerage custody provided by Pershing LLC and other services provided by Pershing Advisor Solutions LLC. Both members of FINRA and SIPC. Private banking and bank custody provided by BNY Mellon N.A. Member FDIC.
Global News.
With the shift to remote working, Video conferencing has become the new normal to keep your business running. But is it reliable and secure? Cisco WebEx is committed to the highest security standards and already trusted by both small businesses and many of the world's largest organizations. Call, message and meet securely with Cisco WebEx. Sign up at cisco.uk/work-from-home. When secure remote work is critical, WebEx is essential.
Picture this. Small businesses on eBay are working to
get things moving.
Sending spices to novice cooks.
Hairbands to kids.
Desks for home offices.
Delivering the goods.
Shipping footballs.
Fruit trees.
And dishwashers.
Thousands of small businesses on eBay are helping to keep the nation going. They are individually brilliant, stronger as one. Buy, sell, eBay.
This is a message from the government about the next stage of controlling coronavirus with NHS Test and Trace. To protect your friends and family, testing and tracing must become a new way of life. If you have symptoms, you need to get a test immediately. Don't leave home for any other reason. If you test positive, we will contact you to trace people